Steven and Larry, and we're talking Swish.
Alright guys, we're here. Another edition of Talking Swish. Me and Steven had to make a big old trip back from good old Philly yesterday. But Dewey, how was your weekend?
Oh, good. Pretty relaxing compared to you guys.
Yeah, ours definitely was not as relaxing and not as cheap as sitting at home and doing nothing. It was
I will say, at least my Sunday was quite relaxing. I will give it that. That was basically just a vacation day for me because I didn't even really go to the event all that day to play like you guys did. I
Okay.
said, screw it. I'm staying home. I'm playing a little bit of Pokemon, and I'm watching some pregame for the Super Bowl. So that's what I did Sunday.
I do it.
Yep, but didn't change that this weekend was super expensive because unfortunately in Pennsylvania, gas is damn near $4 a gallon. And
Yep.
that is quite brutal. Yeah, I think it was
Yep.
averaging 380 to 385 at every stop in Pennsylvania.
Oh,
Sheesh.
gosh.
Yep. And this isn't even on like the turnpikes. This was just shopping at Sheets, for example.
Man.
Yeah,
Man.
pretty brutal, pretty expensive trip because of that. But thankfully, I was never more excited to get to Ohio because even the turnpike gas stations in Ohio was like 320 something. So at least the way back was a little bit better, but man, the way there was brutal. And then, of course, Pennsylvania's tolls are so much more expensive than Ohio as well, so that doesn't help matters either. That's the nature of traveling. I do still think, even though we decided to drive, I do think flying would have actually been better value, mainly because of the time you save.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
addition, having to deal with all that. But that's not what we did. But we are going to recap the events over the weekend. We're going to talk a little bit about Philly. Dewey, did you play any events this past weekend? I know, like I said, we were in Philadelphia jamming some good old modern and
Um,
good old
I
flesh and
don't
blood.
think I played anything. I'm trying to remember if I did anything like minor on the weekend, but I don't think there was any tournaments for me to play really.
Okay.
But this upcoming weekend, because they just had the announcement on Melee, they're doing all their next tournament circuit or next qualifier weekends. So, like this weekend, I think there's like 3 or 4 shots at the set championship. Next weekend's like 3 or 4 shots at it. So it's pretty cool.
Yep, I've seen
Very
that.
nice.
Yep, definitely seen that they have some. They're pretty much invitational qualifiers because that's essentially what they are now. And they got a bunch of them on Melee. I know Hooglandia has one Saturday. I believe maybe Crokies was last weekend. I want to say Crokies is this
This is
weekend.
this weekend,
Yeah,
but it's at like 5 in the morning.
yeah, it's time, but it's awesome that he has more availability for those that aren't all U.S. based because
Yep.
giving everyone an opportunity to play is awesome. I
For
know
sure.
there
For
was one.
free too, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I was looking at the historic one for Sunday.
Hmm.
I forgot who's running the event per se, but I looked it up. I think I was talking to Steven a little bit about it. How I was telling him I'm not going to NRG. I think that it's too expensive to play a limited tournament for my liking right now. I really don't want to pay $70 for 6 booster packs of standard. It's not really my idea of a good time. I really don't want to travel and spend any more money on like a travel weekend as well, especially with how expensive Philadelphia trip ended up being.
That's fair.
Yep.
But mentioning Philadelphia, let's talk a little bit about that. We're gonna go ahead and talk about our future events that we're gonna be doing this weekend, some of the preparation we're gonna be doing, and all that good stuff. But Philadelphia was interesting. Me and Steven and Zach Allen from over across the pond in your area, Dewey. We went and made the nice little trip to Philadelphia on Friday, and then we played the modern 10K Saturday. And there's a lot of bad that came with that 10K. We're gonna just put that out there now. There's a lot of bad things that came about this weekend. It was cool that the attendance was good.
Attendance
Okay.
was good.
Yep, the convention center was pretty packed. They were firing off side events way better than they did at the the Invitational SCG Con, because I played the side event circuit at the last one, and there was a few times where side events just got canceled. That one, this one was pretty consistent too. All their side event areas were nice and full, which was awesome for their future. And also, Philadelphia is probably a better market area to do it. And would it not be in like the Invitation Weekend where it was like the very first SCG event coming back? I think that helped them get their attendance up a little bit.
Yep.
But let's talk about this 10 case structure they had. So let's backtrack to when we're traveling to SCG Con that Friday.
Okay.
I didn't get to partake in any pre-releases or do any of that stuff. However, I have social media and a lot of friends that do, and I have friends that are TOs and stuff that or work in game shops. EventLink crashed on Friday.
Okay.
Everywhere. EventLink, for those that don't know, is the companion app.
Yep.
It crashed everywhere, and people were not able to like do their events very, very easily, for lack of better terms, because people talk crap about the old Wizards Event Reporter. But when the thing would crash, you could go into an offline mode and you could still run your events. Companion app don't have that capability without their servers and stuff. So people were having to do like these large events by hand, like hand pairings and everything. I guess that's what they had to do at SCG Con Friday for all their big, because they had like big pre-release events, like big, like pretty much like double ups and things like that, and they had to like pair everything by hand, which was a nightmare to say the least.
Yeah, rough.
Yeah, I'll say.
Now let's talk about rough. So, for those that don't know as well, there was a 10K modern event. It capped out very quickly, so they added a second one. Reasonable. It's been weeks since they announced that they're going to do a second one. They were just going to divide players if they didn't like cap them both out, or they did cap them both to make sure that they were both even numbers. Yada yada, move on. Easy enough. It should be a pretty easy tournament, not a big deal. Well, EventLink they decided they were going to do things a little weird for SCG. They were going to register the event on MTG Melee. They're going to do their deck list on MTG Melee. But they were going to run the actual event using the companion app. Which, I have no idea why they are even doing that.
Yeah, that's just really weird to me.
There's like literally nothing that they gain from doing it. Because they don't need the companion app perks, because they get that by just running stuff right out of their area at their store or whatnot.
Right.
So they don't have to worry about that perk or anything. They could just do all their like small side events off of the companion app and they'd be perfectly fine. So there's like literally nothing to gain using the companion app. But they had a lot to lose. And here's how they did some losing. So one, they wanted both 10Ks to use the same clock and all that, which is pretty crazy when they just had clocks on that side anyway, which it wouldn't make any sense to have two different clocks at all. But they wouldn't start the round till both tournaments were ready to start. So,
Okay, but this is just me curious. They want them both to have the same start time. I can get that. What happens when one tournament's running longer than another one? Let's say your one round has a delay, some awkward judge call, a deck check was involved as well. You're 30 minutes over.
the other
Does the
tournaments
other
screwed
10K?
too.
That's
Bro, it was really bad. These tournaments didn't end until like 1 a.m.
Yeah, spoiler alert. I was actually gonna say that. I was gonna be like, hey, spoiler real quick. These tournaments were long as fuck. Let's be blunt. They didn't have to be this long. They really didn't.
and that's 1 a.m. for the top 8 or just 1 a.m. for just Swiss?
That's 1 a.m. for the top 8.
Yeah,
That's
for the
for
top
the
eight.
top 8. The Swiss was over around 11 o'clock. Almost,
Like 10, 11 p.m. That's not
Still.
that's not like kudos to SCG. Like, good job. No, which it makes no
How
sense.
many rounds were there?
9. Which
9 rounds?
Here's my argument for that, where it makes no sense, because they ran 9 rounds with opens and day ones never ended at 10
Oh,
o'clock.
hell, bro!
No.
You
Like-
can't you can't go get dinner at a lot of places that late. Like a lot of places
Mickey
are starting to
D's.
close. Yeah, it's just stupid.
Yeah, most places have either shut down. You're gonna go there and they might have a minor kitchen. You're not gonna get a full menu.
Yeah.
Nope.
Uh,
And so yeah.
And as we've talked about, that's one of the big reasons for traveling and is enjoying all that.
Yep.
Yep.
Like me, Steven, and Zach all finished 2-3, which we're gonna be breaking down some of the unfortunate situations of our rounds. At least for me and Steven, because I wasn't there for Zach's matchup, so I don't want to speak on his.
Oh, don't worry. I can tell you all about
Okay.
Zach's.
Thankfully, Steven could fill us in.
I
But
can tell you all about Zach's.
Me and Steven was actually able to go check out this sweet barbecue joint, and then we went into the mall and went to Mrs. Fields Cookies, and it was awesome.
You guys never had Mrs. Fields cookies?
We had one in Lansing like a long time
I had
ago.
not. I had not. It was very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had one out at where the students from Michigan State were at in the mall. But they went out probably a decade ago.
Yeah, I think there used to be one at, I forget if it was Woodland Mall
Okay.
or Rivertown Mall near us.
It feels
But-
like Rivertown would be where Mrs. Fields would be at.
I think it was Rivertown, and I think it was when they first opened, 20 years ago.
I was going to say, that had to be a minute ago, bro.
But I did always like them. They're kind of like the what's the Cinnabon place that people always hype about when they go to the airport or so.
So what was nice with them is we went and got the cookie shakes or chillers they call them, and it's pretty much like the chocolate cake shake from Portillo's, where they just make a shake but they actually put cookies into the shake when they're making it.
Yep.
Steven got pretty much a sugar cookie one.
Oh, it was so good.
Where
man.
I got
So
the
good.
white chip macadamia nut ones, and worth.
Oh, very, very good.
Yeah, it
Very
was
good.
awesome. But talking about the event a little bit on how shitty it was. So the event was supposed to start at 10 a.m. It started probably 11:20, probably somewhere around there. Was with
No earlier than 11. That's for sure. We went over it. We were an hour late.
between at least every round that we played. When pairings went up, it probably was 20-25 minutes before the round actually started. It was so bad. So
at least
bad.
At least 10-15 minutes. At least 10-15 minutes.
Remind me what the technical start time was supposed to be
10
before
a.m.
the
10 a.m.
10 a.m. to 11.
11:20 around. It was between 11:20 11:25.
Let's be conservative still though. 13 hours to run 9 rounds.
Yes, because literally it takes them 20-25 minutes to start the round once they put the pairings on, because they put the pairings on one fucking board per tournament for your names and stuff. So you have this crowd. It had to be a crowd of 60 people. It felt like maybe it was a little less, but 60 people.
Wasn't there 400 people per 10K? There was 400 people.
Yes, and the second one barely missed cap by probably 10 players, if not less. So we're just going to round up and just say both are around 800, because it ain't going to really matter with 8 players being off of one.
Right.
So you got these 2 big-ass tournaments. So now they want the clocks set, because it just makes no sense where they could just go over to the computer. That's where the timer is for that second tournament. Click the button to change the color to signal a different tournament. They do it with every single other one in that whole damn building. But they didn't want to do it for this tournament for reasons I don't know. And here is the most one of the annoying part. I'm sitting here and I'm playing, right? And it's 10 minutes into the match, and there's no judge staff around us. They had all their judge staff working the super pre-release event, passing out boosters and stuff and helping with that, where you have your 2 fucking 10Ks, and there's 2 people calling judge with their hands up, just sitting there. Just sitting there. And this is why the tournament ran so long, because now you got them. And if I'm those players, I'm asking for a long time extension.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
100%. Because you have your judge staff working a jank-ass pre-release over your big premiere event.
Yep.
No disrespect to pre-releases in general, but it's just their running of things. It's
Yeah,
so annoying.
Pre-releases are fun, but you've got 2 10Ks that you're supposed to be prioritizing. That's how it's supposed to be. Every other event we've ever gone to, your priority event gets the most staff.
Mhm.
And then like on day 2, when you're doing like your second part of it where you have the 6 rounds, you trim it down on the staff to just the people that are really needed because you've diminished the amount of people that are at this event significantly.
Yep.
Not day 1 when you have 800 people.
Exactly. And the thing about it makes no sense is pre-release is only 3 rounds. Those side events are 3 rounds. So you have all
Yep.
this extra staff to help out for a tournament that's only going to be 3 rounds regardless. So what's the time matter how long it takes them to get done? We literally have a 9-round tournament that you have a playoff for, which it's super funny to me still that nobody wanted to split that tournament, by the way. They got to the point where, like, we've been here this long, we're going for all the marbles. Because neither day split, I believe.
I honestly believe it's just an endurance thing, right? Like some of those end grinders are like, I'm more awake than this guy. I got some extra caffeine in me. Let's see how I do.
Fuck that noise, dog. I'm so good on that. You get me at 11 p.m., so they're like, would you like to split? Yes.
Dude, we were annoyed at a 1K that we lost an extra hour and a half when the tournament was supposed to be over at like 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock.
Yeah, I was annoyed because we didn't get to go get food. Me and Steven.
Exactly. It's the same thing. I mean, like, we just want properly run tournaments and then reasonable splits so we can dip out of there, right? Like, I'm not trying to waste my life.
Exactly.
There's nothing we're going for, right? There's no more point series. It's just all about the money now.
Yeah, there's no point series. There's no coverage. So the thing is that tournaments that ran with coverage ended so much quicker than this tournament. Because with coverage, at least they got that little bit of time they have to deal with.
This is bad, but like, what if another thought about them cutting coverage was so then nobody could be aware of how badly these are run?
Maybe.
That's a good point.
I mean, kind of, right? Like, the only people that are aware of it are the ones that are there, and then it's only the people that talk about it on Twitter.
Yep. It's true.
People like to talk a lot of crap about the secret GP. Just saying, we weren't there all day. Like,
Yeah, I mean this event was not run much better, if any better, than the secret GP at all. To be completely honest, maybe a little bit, but not by a ton. I mean, it was pretty poorly run, which is unfortunate because you usually don't say that about SCG events. Now I know they've made a lot of changes in the last few months, and this in particular was another just like seemed like a very negative. I really hope they don't continue to go down this path. I hope they improve. I don't want to go through that again in Indy. I'll tell you that much. Can you imagine a team event with all this nonsense going on too? It's going to be even worse.
I mean, I will just say, based off your guys' what I'm hearing so far, I'm happy that I'm having SCG on the back burner.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I can't really tell you I'm that happy I went. There was nothing that positive about it, other than hanging out with friends or whatever. But at the end of the day, like I can hang out with all these guys on a Discord call from my own house, not having to spend $500 to travel across the country, and then not get a very good tournament experience either. And obviously, some of it boils down to I didn't do great in the tournament either, but like the tournament itself was just not very pleasant.
Yeah, man, we've had plenty of tournaments where we bomb out and we have a great weekend.
Yeah.
Also
and we still had a fine weekend.
Team going.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It also helps that most of our tournaments we've been going to haven't been like long distance. It's probably our longest like tenured one. We did New York, but New York wasn't even that bad price wise, which is so funny. And it helps.
Yeah, the amount of money you guys are saying you guys spent, I don't know if it's because of a small group or something, but like we didn't. I don't remember. Those 3 nights you guys stayed there.
So there was a couple reasons that I think this ended up being a little expensive. One, Zach was very adamant that we should book the room on the way down.
That's the worst idea ever.
Yeah, I'm still convinced that it wasn't the greatest idea, but I get it.
You know my policy on this. I'm usually like confirming and locking things in like a month prior.
Yeah. Also, with it only being 3, when typically a 4-person like split is going to always be better.
Yeah.
So that's going to add some money like into your gas range, especially for long trips. With New York, we had 4 of us. So
Yeah.
4-way split on everything is a little bit easier than a 3-way split.
Yeah,
it's
much
huge.
easier. Much easier. Yeah.
And just with everything involved, I just think, yeah, it just feels like New York was just like the room was end up being super cheap compared to this one. Everything that we did in New York was, and plus, it also helps that honestly, it depends on the event that you're going to, like what you're getting back from that event.
Yeah.
Like, unfortunately, like I said, our results we both ended up at 2-3. And let's talk about those 2-3s a little bit, and then we'll get
Yeah,
back
what
to.
happened with that?
We're gonna get back to shit talking SCG a little bit too. Like, don't get me wrong, there's more to talk about, but we're gonna be We're not here just to talk shit talk SCG. Let's shit talk our performance too, because that
It's
was
about balance.
that was our performance was pretty much bad all the way. Just to
So,
be
what were the
honest.
deck choices that you guys finalized?
Literally nobody in our group had better than a 50% win rate in any event this weekend, which is sickening because between the three of us, we played 6 events, right? No, 5 events. We played 5 events. Nobody did better than 50% in anything. And that's like really bad, like
Yeah.
really, really bad. But nonetheless, I ended up playing Elementals in Modern, which is what I said I was going to play most
Yeah.
last week.
And I went on Grixis Death Shadow, as I mentioned last week that I was going to
Right,
be on.
right.
Yep.
How do we want to kickstart this out? Do we talk about Steven, like,
Whoever wants to. I mean,
Yeah.
whoever wants to talk about their thing, and then we'll keep it just to you, and then we'll move on to the other person.
well,
Go ahead, Larry. Yep.
all right, we could talk about how. Let's talk a little bit about the thing in big tournaments called the pairing lottery, because I got
Yep.
to experience this pretty well this weekend.
Yep.
So, pairing lottery, for those that don't know what that means, is when you go to a big Magic tournament, you're going to be paired up against a random individual round one. And unfortunately, with Modern and these Eternal formats, you're going to be playing up against matchups that isn't great for you, or you're going to play against those rogue matchups that you don't expect that kind of gun for you.
Yep.
Well, that's where my round one came involved. I'm playing Grixis Death Shadow, and I run up against Mono Red Eldrazi. So, here's what this deck's goal is. They're throwing in Blood Moons, Chalice of the Voids against you, along with pressure. So by the time you can get out from underneath those hate cards, you're probably going to be dead. They also got cards like Thought Knot Seer, Bone Crusher Giant, good value cards. Good way to just interrupt what you're trying to do and just like close the game out. So that's why I went up into round one. I opened up with a hand with a couple hand destruction spells on a mode of 5, and I was like, alright, this is good enough. I don't know what he's playing at all. He has no companion, so I have a lot of decks I have off the radar, but I don't know what he's actually on. I don't know what to put him on. So I thought season turn 1, and I look at this hand that's like Blood Moon, Bone Crusher Giant, Reality Smashers, and I'm like, the fuck is this? And it has like temples, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take your Bone Crusher Giant for this one, because I have another Inquisition style effect in my hand. I'm gonna take the Blood Moon on the next one. Reasoning, I was like, I don't really want to deal with the 2-for-1. It's not really what I want in my life. I'd like to have this Darcy in my hand, not die if I play it.
Right.
So I went that because I was gonna go turn 2 Darcy, hand a such spell, and I didn't want him to be like in response, kill Darcy and make me all big sad. So I go, I do my thing, take his Blood Moon because I can't beat a Blood Moon. I don't know if you've ever played Death Shadow, but beating Blood Moon's kind of hard. Turns
Your
out,
deck, yeah. Your deck may or may not be the reason I played,
yeah.
Eldrazi Chalice decks for quite some time.
And also, there's not a lot of enchantment removal in Grixis Death Shadow. Not the most. I don't know if you played it recently, but it's
No.
pretty bad at the enchantment removal. We need some Feed the Swarms, guys. Feed the Swarm is all I was thinking that whole match. Was, man, if I top deck Feed the Swarm right now, it'd be pretty impressive since it ain't in the deck. But
Yeah.
so he goes, and then he's looking. asked him if he wants to play revealed or not, or write it down. He's like, I'll play revealed. I was like, MVP. In my head, I'm like, yeah, he's doing that because he knows he's about to smash my face in. It's cool.
Yeah.
Because I'm not
Classic.
delusional. I have little faith that I can actually win this in the best, like, get the 2 wins against this deck. Because this deck's going to be very hard to beat. It's possible, but it's going to be hard. He draws his card, looks at it for a second, puts it face down, sits there, plays his land, sits there again. I'm tapped out. 100% tapped out. And I have like 2 cards in hand or whatever it is at this point. And he's like, guess I'll go for it. Blood Moon. And I'm like, it's good. Kudos. I was like, I'm proud of you. I didn't say I'm proud of you because I'm not a douche to players when I'm playing them unless I know you. But in my head, I'm like, proud of you. I die because then he goes and top decks some Reality Smasher, and I don't live very long to tell people the story.
He smashed you a few times.
Yeah. He didn't get to play it on curve because his temples were turned off, but he got to play it on curve. Let's be real. It was on turn 5. It was a pretty brutal day at the office. Oh, and Darcy ended up dying too in the process. It was all a great match. It was a good time. Well, great game. Then game 2, I'm like, all right, I got him. I got the perfect plan. I got 3 Colligan's commands. I am going to wreck him. I'm not going to even let Blood Moon resolve. I go and I'm on the play. I go, my hand's fine. I go and take a card out of his hand. Nothing. I forget what was actually in his hand that I took. I might have took a smasher. I don't remember what turn 1 was. It wasn't one of his hate pieces. Top decks Chalice of the Void naturally and plays Chalice for 1 on curve. It was about perfect. So now I'm just stuck with all these 1-drops, and I never see Colligan's command after a couple iterations, and his smasher came down on turn 3 and killed me.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there. He was like, yeah, I think this is a great matchup. I was like, it's not bad. It's not bad for you. So I started out 0-1. Then, if we want to move on to the next round, I get played against Belcher. The Belcher matchup's quite fun. Game 1, I got turn 2'd. Yeah, not much to really talk about it except I got turn 2'd by Belcher blindly. I'm like, I don't know what to really... He was like, keep 7. I thought he's hand disrupting him, and he still did it. Because this guy, you're going to notice after I tell you about this round how lucky this dude is. So game 2, I go do the hand disruption. I ended up doing some stuff early to shut him down. This is the game that I took his Spikefield Hazard turn 1, so he only had 1 actual land in hand. He plays it tapped. He's missing lands. He goes to try to play Striker Rich. I Spell Pierce it to try to keep him off mana. Then he eventually draws in the Belcher and the mana source. He gets Belcher into play, says go. I have a monkey with some 3 treasure tokens. I'm like, all right, attack with monkey. I don't know what I could do because I didn't draw Colligan's command. He reveals Force of Vigor. I play his Force of Vigor and blow up his Belcher, and I end up winning that game. Game 3, still I keep it mostly hand disruption, hand with some medium pressure. I'm trying to clock him with monkey and stuff, doing all that kind of nonsense. He has no Belchers. I've taken 2 out of his hand. It's looking good. My last hand disruption spell that I'm looking at he has like Manamorphose, and he has like some rituals and stuff. I was like, I want to take the rituals, but I know I got to take the cantrip Manamorphose because that's just a new card. I have to force in the top deck, even though if I take the rituals, it probably gives me a best chance of like stopping it. But I take the Manamorphose to prevent the chances of him drawing into another Belcher. He naturally draws the Belcher anyway, because that's what they do against all these decks. And he plays Belcher, says pass. I draw my card. It's a weird looking Colligan's command because it's not one. And I died the next turn. Because Monkey didn't hit it this time. Monkey hit a ritual, and I was like, that ain't going to do it. So, I died to Belcher. And then I died to a Chalice of the Void main deck blue-white control. And
Mhm.
the next round, the more of that is I got Chalice both game, and he made sure to chalice me when he could protect it. Um, that's how both games there went. Not much. It wasn't a very exciting matchup. Not
No.
exciting at all. Then I was 0-3, and I was like, well, I'm gonna keep playing because Steven and them still playing. And I
Yeah.
played Mill twice, and I spanked him around. Beat one of the games. I was at one card left in my library. The first Mill I played was non-Loris, and I still don't know why. I don't know.
Uh, Either they're doing it so they can play Ensnaring Bridge in the main.
That would make sense, I
Okay,
guess.
that has to be it because I never seen anything, and I just
Yeah.
couldn't think. Because there was one moment, I forget if it was the first or second one, but I ended up milling him with one of his cards with Ragavan so I could turn on Drawn on the lock to counter anything. But I didn't. I don't. I think it was the Loris build that I did that against.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, but no, I beat them both. Like Drawn on the lock was just so good to turn off the 3-mana spell. I can't think of the name right now, but pretty much exiles my whole deck. At least it feels like it. Post sport, I was actually bringing in like Colligan's commands and things like that just to increase my CMC count. I wanted to have more CMC in my deck in the long run. I was taking baubles out for like 1-mana spells just to try to give me a little bit of life because I feel like I could win if I get into the mid-late game.
Yeah.
And that's what I was doing in Crush. Well, I wouldn't say Crush, like, because Game 3 was a little brutal for my opponent on Loris because it was like turn like 12 and I have like 14 cards in my graveyard. I just wasn't letting him do anything. I
Sure.
kept. He also, I don't not convinced he boarded correctly because he like cut crabs, and I was like, I don't feel like that's correct. Like
There's no way.
I was like, I can't.
No way.
I don't play a ton of mill, but I was like,
No way. There's no way.
yeah, like,
Yeah, you can't just
No
cut
way.
those. Yeah.
The O 03 blocks your 2-1 as
Yeah.
well.
Box Monkey.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to commit another spell to it, and early on it keeps all your creatures back.
Mhm.
You got to commit spells to it, and like, I don't, it's just so bad.
That's a whoopsie.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, for sure.
yeah. I don't know how the matchup should be. It felt fine. Theoretically,
I
seems
mean,
like it'll be fine.
I think at the end of the day, for Mill versus Shadow, it's just whether or not they get Tasha's off or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I spent most of my games just trying to prevent Tasha's from resolving.
And their whole game plan should be trying to make sure it gets through.
Yep.
Yep.
It was nice. What was nice in Game 3 is I opened my hand with Watery Grave Thoughtseize, so I did that before instead of the Fetch Shock, because you get the Fetch Shock pretty willy-nilly against them, just to make sure that I could take his Archive Trap if he had it in hand, which he did, which I was like, oh, next level. Not really. It was just the correct thing to do. But in my head, it was next level.
Right.
But yeah, we ended up. I didn't actually drop for the tournament. I just didn't. I still took the win. Don't get me wrong. I needed the one little bit of winning I could get that day, but I ended up not dropping. So whoever got paired against me got a free win.
Nice.
You know, they can get that W. But
I remember
easy
doing
peasy.
that for the Wizards events, where like they're paying out for wins, but I just like at some point you don't care anymore. So you're just like, I don't drop, so the next person can just get a free win, so they have an increased chance of getting prize.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, that's super awesome. But yeah, that was how my tournament went. Finished 2-3. Not the most exciting day. Obviously, Death Shell is super sweet. I just got a little unlucky. Once you lose the first round pairing lottery loss is pretty brutal. Because now you have a higher chance of actually getting that pairing lottery to be less in your favor. Because you can play even more rogue decks and things like that in an 0-1 bracket compared to being 1-0.
Right.
So, just have to move on to another weekend. Obviously, Death Shell is still going to be one of the top decks of the format.
Oh, for sure.
But let's talk a little bit about Steven's results. Steven, go ahead and kick it off. Tell us a little bit about what changes that you made to the deck before the event.
Oh yeah, funny I'm glad you reminded me because I was thinking of this like 10 minutes ago when you were talking. Dewey, I don't know if you and Zach did any swap arounds with cards, but you're going to have an extra Utopia Sprawl in that deck probably. And the Omnath, the like random Omnath, is with Allen's. You guys are going to have to swap those cards at some point, because that's the change I made before the tournament, was putting a 4th Utopia Sprawl in the deck instead of that Omnath.
Okay.
Because turn 1 Utopia Sprawl is just like very important.
I was curious about that when I was building the deck, and I was like,
Yeah.
I thought he had even made a point to tell me of how big of a deal this, how powerful the deck becomes
Yeah,
when you get
it's
turn 1
just
Utopia.
it's one of those things where like other people keep doing well with this deck with 3 sprawls, and I just like fall for trying to play 3 sprawls, and it's just not. I don't think it's right. But regardless, I mean, I still couldn't hit turn 1 sprawls very often to save my life, even with 4 in my deck. But regardless, so that was the change I made. Played the deck. Won my first round. I played against, I think her name was Taylor. She was pretty new to the tournament scene. I think she said it was like the first comp event she'd ever been to.
Mhm.
She was playing Red Black Goblins. She played pretty well, but that matchup's pretty good for me, and she did miss a few triggers here or there, which did help me a little bit. But at the end of the day, I don't think she was beating the hands that I had, so that was pretty fortunate. I think I beat her 2-0. So I started 1-0 and was pretty happy about it. And then round 2, I played against so my opponent led with no companion again, which was the same as round 1. So I was hoping that it would be like Blue-Red Murktide or something of that nature. But I was really hopeful it would not be Tron or Belcher, because those are 2 really popular decks that don't play a companion as well. And unfortunately for me, I like mulled to 6, didn't have a Utopia Sprawl, but I kept a on the play Reef on turn 3, and then had some other good stuff going on too. I had like Solitude Ephemerate, stuff like that. And my opponent goes turn 1, Valakut's Awakening tapped, and I'm like, yep, here we go. And so I think I died that game on like turn 3 or 4. And when I played my Risen Reef my opponent like made a comment on turn 2. They're like, I'm not sure what you're playing quite yet. I was like, you're about to. Then I played Risen Reef on turn 3. And I'm just like, yep, the jig's up. I was really hoping you weren't playing this deck. And then I like died the next turn or whatever.
Yeah.
And then game 2, I mulled a 5. My 5 is 2 lands, Teferi, Force of Negation, Leyline of Sanctity, and those are the 5. Those are the 5 that I kept, I believe. And obviously, I Leyline on turn 1. They're actually, I lied. My opener was even better than that. I don't know if there was a Force yet. There may have been a Force, but I think it was Force, Leyline, Risen Reef, 2 lands, Utopia Sprawl, or something of that nature. I had a really, really good hand. I like played a Risen Reef on turn 2, but then it got hit with a Spike Field Hazard. My opponent mulled to 6 and then kept a very solid 6. Moral of the story here is Leyline felt really bad in that matchup. It still didn't feel good enough because they just recrossed the paths and worked their way around it. So I really wish there just wouldn't have been Leylines in my sideboard this weekend, and it would have had like more forces and like subtleties and like maybe an Alpine Moon or like actual cards that can beat these hard matchups, because Leyline just did not feel like it was it. But maybe I got unlucky that my opponent had a recross. I don't really know. But did not feel great. My opponent was able to recross. I couldn't force because I didn't have a blue card, because I had to try and set up and put myself in a position where I could actually get cards back in my hand. So I like put the Teferi in place. They couldn't reforge the soul with the recross the paths and all this. And I will say my opponent even complimented me in this with this play in this game too. I actually played one of my better games of the entire day in game 2 of this match, because I was in a spot where I had to -2 a Teferi that was at 2 loyalty, and my opponent had an Ascension in play, and I chose to not bounce their Ascension because I knew that the only out was top decking a Prismatic Ending or a Foundation Breaker, and I hit Risen Reef into Prismatic Ending, so I was able to Risen Reef and still ending their Ascension, and then they had to recross and build a new path, or build a new pile. They were still able to beat me because they were able to set up Furies after I broke that pattern. But my opponent after the match was even like, yeah, I think you played that like perfect. You just the matchup's bad. The matchup's tough, and it was even worse for me because the sideboard just was not. I don't know if Leyline is actually that good against Belcher, but again, maybe I just got unlucky that they had recross and I had to mold at 5. But either way, matchup's tough. I lost that one. My next round, I played against the red-white Crack the Earth deck, and again, I think I had to like mulligan to 5 in game 2, and my keep was very awkward. It was Renin 6 with a Cavern of Souls and a Shock land. So and then I didn't draw a fetch for quite a long time. I had to like pitch Omnath to a Fury, which was super awkward because I had to Fury and I needed the Ren to set up my lands. I couldn't afford to keep the Omnath. I was already down to 5 cards. Just like everything went really bad that game. And then I was able to kind of get back in the game with the Ren, but then I drew like 4 lands in a row and just kind of puttered out and died, and they were able to assemble Luris and kind of beat me with that. So then I lost that round, and the next round was pretty funny. I got a win. I played against a guy that I knew had just played Larry because he said, oh, another Team Swish guy. And unfortunately for this opponent, I had already seen both of Larry's other opponents on the day. So I literally knew he was the only guy that I had not seen, and the only guy that I had not seen was playing blue-white control. So I knew immediately that it was on blue-white control, and I snap-kept an opening 7 that went Sprawl into Teferi. And that ended up being really, really good. I ended up winning that game, establishing a Ren and a Teferi, and just kind of buried him with cards. He also missed a land, too. He, like, missed his 4th or 3rd land drop, something ridiculous, and just got super buried. But we had a good match, though. I ended up getting buried in game 2 because I also couldn't draw a land, and then game 3 was a pretty close game, but I was able to get him. And then in my last round, I played against Jim Davis. He revealed a Gigantha. I know he's playing Tron because Jim Davis is already a pretty avid Tron player. He plays a lot of Tron in Modern. He has in the past. So I was already expecting that he might be doing something degenerate before he even showed the Gigantha. And then when he showed the Gigantha, I'm like, there's like 0 chance he's playing Affinity. He's just on Tron. So I mulligan to 5 again, looking for a Sprawl. Can't find a Sprawl into like good cards. So I like keep a 5 that was like okay. I tried to bluff that I was on blue-white control, and it worked until turn 3. But he didn't play one of his Tron lands on turn 2 because he thought I was on blue-white control, so he didn't want to expose the other one to Spreading Seas, I guess. So he played an Urza Saga, and then I was like, well, on my turn 3, I had it to Fairy, so I showed him that I was on Elementals to bounce the Saga back to his hand and see if I could like draw into a good spot, but I just couldn't. I still got beat very, very badly. Game 2, my opener was 1 Plains, Ephemerate, Double Fury, Prismatic Ending, 2 other cards. I don't even remember what they were, but I kept the 7 because I played basically a 6/6 on turn 1. Mm-hmm. And he kept 7 naturally, and he goes Tron Land Map after I put a Fury into play on turn 1. But he and I were both kind of chuckling because he goes, yeah, I respect that you put a 6-power creature into play on turn 1. I was like, yeah, man, I can't really do much else in this matchup, so I'm just going to keep this hand. And then he goes turn 1 map, I go turn 1 ending it, and then I get him to 2 life, and he still sets up an Ugin or whatever on turn 4. So, I don't really know what. And then I never drew a second. I may have drawn a second land like the turn after I got Karned or whatever, or Ugin or whatever it was. But I got beat very badly that game as well. Put him to 2, and that was the end of my day. And then we'll briefly review Zach Allen's day. So I don't remember what he lost to in round 3. I think he lost in round 3 to something. He definitely lost in round 3 to something. I don't remember what, but I remember him telling me that in round 4, he kept a 3-lander in game 3 against whatever his opponent was on, and then drew 4 Yawgmoths in a row and a Chord of Calling. So he drew 5 non-castables in a row while his opponent interacted with all the things he did in the early game. And he just like puttered out and died because he couldn't play any spells. And then the last match, I got the pleasure of watching this one. Typically, it's funny because a lot of games where I watch Zach, especially on Moto and stuff, he typically gets like really fortunate in a lot of spots. And it started like one of those games. Alan mulls to 6, and he keeps a hand with no 1-drop or 2-drop. The hand is god-awful, but he keeps it because he didn't want to mulligan any further, and he's against blue-white control. So he's like, whatever, I'm just going to keep it. I can't win on 5 cards. He draws into he draws into Hierarch, Ignoble Hierarch. That's his first draw. His opponent ends up answering it, I believe, and then Alan top decks the 2-drop that transforms when it's day-night. So Alan like top decks 1-drop into 2-drop, which is like really, really good. And basically, Alan's able to get a Grist onto the board, and things are looking good. His opponent is able to deal with the Grist eventually. And then Alan puts himself in a spot where he's able to Thought Seize his opponent, and he sees that his opponent has not a ton. They have like Big Teferi, Memory Deluge, lands, and maybe a counterspell. But the counterspell is like pretty awkward at this point. And the Deluge isn't going to prevent his opponent from like dying on the following turn. Alan literally puts Lethal into play, resolves the Thoughtseize, takes Teferi, and then his opponent draws. He goes, oh, well, that's a pretty good one, and goes Supreme Verdict you and kills everything on Alan's side of the board. And then Alan proceeds to lose the game to the top deck Supreme Verdict.
Oh God!
But ultimately, yeah, I mean, there were some rough beats for all three of us this weekend, which, that's a Magic tournament sometimes, but it's just particularly funny that it happened at this event because Alan was convinced that we were going to be. Event. Oh yeah, this was the event that we were going to get paid. We were going to be the highest level players in the room, and we just got bodied at just every level. Alan and Larry both went like 50% on Sunday as well. So there was no money to be had for us. There was no getting paid. We were paying SCG is what was happening. They were getting paid for not even providing us with a particularly well-run event either. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it was kind of a rough weekend, but it was fun to hang out with everybody. And but I'm going to be honest with you. If I could like do it over, I would not choose to do that again. If I would have known that we were going to get bodied like that, there's not a chance that I would have gone to the event. The only reason I went to it was 1, Alan wanted to go, and 2, I did think there was reasonable chance that we would do well. But I've been a little cold in my last few competitive events. I guess getting 9th place in the last one isn't really that cold. But it just, it sucks to miss. That is still a pretty good finish, all things considered. But it just, sucks falling a little short. But this one was bad. This was not a good event for any of us.
Yeah.
So
mine, I just had the pairing lottery just hit me too hard because to fast forward a little bit, I played the Flesh and Blood PTQ, which is called Battle Hardened, I believe it's called. They changed the name for like the Sunday events because now Pro Quests are being the ones that's held in stores.
Yeah.
So I'm still like trying to remember what they're calling it now. But essentially it's a PTQ. Winner goes on to the Pro Tour, and then you have like pricing and stuff for the additional pricing for top 8, yada yada. Well, I get there. I'm playing a deck. It's a tier 3 deck. Because it's good against some of these like newer and like established tier 1 decks. Naturally, I pair against the mirror round one. Here's the kicker. I found out there was only 2 people playing this deck, and it was us 2.
Ha! Oh, that's great.
Oh my gosh.
So not only is my pairing lottery sucky in Magic this past weekend, but I was lucky enough to play the mirror, which they're playing the build that's better in the mirror too, which I probably should have been playing that build, but I was playing a lot of the newer cards I didn't have time to test.
Sure.
And, that was fucked up. It dealt me like 28 damage in one turn. I was like, holy fuck.
It's a lot in Flesh and Blood.
Yeah. Like, it's a lot of damage general. And then Steven's like laughing in the messages because how it's so different. Because I was telling him, I was like, yeah, I'm not winning a lot of die rolls so I can go second. And it's so weird compared to Magic. Because I want to play an aggro deck going second.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I could not win a die roll to be set up. I finally win a die roll, and it's the one matchup where I actually have to go first because I can't let them go first. Because, Steven, the little bit of playing you had, it was against Chain, which I don't want them establishing where they could go and just start dredging every turn, a turn quicker. So I can't afford to let them go first. So I'm sitting there like, well, doesn't this suck?
Yeah,
And then I didn't win another Dyro after that. I was like, well, here we are. Winning Dyros always helps in TCGs.
it
I've heard.
typically does. It
For
typically
those that
does.
use Dyros, I don't know if there's any TCGs that does this different form. I don't play the other ones, so I can't like.
Don't know either.
They like flip coins sometimes.
Oh, that
Yep.
seems worse. I think
I mean,
the odds are better to roll die.
Okay. Uh, next topic. On to the next topic.
Do we just don't know math?
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
ignore the fact that I'm Asian.
Yeah, I don't believe in stereotypes.
Oh, good. 'Cause you also don't believe in math.
Math is just like opinions. But no, now we're gonna go back and shit talk SCG a little bit more.
Okay.
I just have to now, Dewey. You're an outside. Obviously, we're gonna like opinions are gonna be somewhat skewed because the event didn't go great as well.
Right.
Based on what we told you, how they were using companion app, even though they were using melee for like the deck list and everything. What is the reason that you wouldn't just use melee for everything?
Well, Melee itself obviously also has issues, right? Like, you have the concerns that, like, what Legacy Pet went through, right? To be a neutral standpoint on this, like, you have the potential that it crashes. It's not great for mobile. Melee's just not.
Okay.
It had issues with load. Here's the biggest problem, and I don't believe there were other tournaments happening that day, so this isn't really a saving grace for them. But if there's a lot of tournaments being ran on the same day, it's a huge burden on them,
That's fair.
and it could crash the server. But I don't believe there were any melee tournaments that were like a big deal going on, because if there was, probably would have been playing it.
And if that logic stands the same, right? Is
Yeah.
companion app a better alternative when on pre-release weekend?
I don't know what this like to get to like properly answer that question. It would require us to know the knowledge of like what their servers are able to do.
Right.
Um, I myself, I probably would have hedged my bet and ran my big events on Melee, and then ran all my side events on the companion app. But that's just me.
Yeah, because
Because worst case scenario, you can just run offline to an extent, right? Or locally to some extent, and then the Melee, you already have people. Everyone's registered on there.
yeah,
And then you can choose to hide the deck list regardless, right? If I remember correctly on Melee.
yep,
So it's an option. So like that's not an issue.
yeah, because
So
we couldn't see the deck list on Pit. The only thing that Legacy Pit had issues with was the deck list entry was messing up, where people couldn't submit their deck list. But that's an easy fix. You could be like, all right, those that can't submit online, just do it in paper, because that actually happened on Saturday. I didn't mention that. I guess because they had two tournaments going on, the deck listing did crash on Melee. So some people had to turn in paper deck lists for the Saturday tournament. I don't know if it messed up for Sunday tournament because I wasn't over in the Legacy area because I was obviously doing the Flesh and Blood tournament. But I do remember because I was joking. I was like, I didn't know we could do paper deck lists, and everyone was like, "Yeah, I guess Melee crashed this morning when people were trying to like get set up and everything."
Oh man, oh man. That is wild. Wild,
uh,
wild.
But
yeah, I mean, I've heard it both ways.
mhm.
Um,
I don't feel like it
about it.
weakens it. Just
Like, didn't some organizers talk about how they didn't have access to the companion app, and that was the only reason they were running it through Melee? But at the end of it, they said that they were just going to keep running everything on Melee anyway, because they were able to integrate, like, you can kind of like put your entire event roster on there, paper and online. Like, I don't think it was Energy that told me that, but I know that Energy has it where all their paper tournaments are registered through Melee and all their online tournaments are as well. So when I want to go, hey, what does NRG have coming up for the next month or two? I can just jump on there and see it all.
yeah, and I like Melee a lot because I've been to all the NRG events. Obviously, NRG is less than 400 players for a tournament, but still, like they've had two something players, and I've never seen an issue with it. But At the
I
same.
mean, sometimes you get like a slower load, but so does the companion app.
Oh
And
yeah.
honestly, I've had such bad experiences with the companion app. I don't know if it's um like ever since I swapped over to the new I picked up the S21 Ultra or whatever last year, and it has an awful time running the companion app. Like I'll be at a tournament and it will just go crash. And I'll go over to the event organizer and I'll be like, "Hey, I can't get my pairings." And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Here," and I just show them the app, and it's completely crashed. It's
Yep.
stuck on a load screen for me, and I've killed the app, restarted my phone, pull it back up, and it's the only app that I have issues with too. That's the worst part. Um,
Yeah, the
uh,
companion app not great. Mine just crashes randomly throughout the day.
mhm.
Like it's.
Like you'll be in the middle of a match and it'll crash.
Yep. I'll get the crash.
So
It crashes a lot when I'm trying to submit my match result. Like
yeah,
it just has
I do
issues.
wish that eventually Melee gets a little bit either a more mobile friendly version of their website because it's fine. It's just not great.
Right.
Like I can deal with it, but I really wish it was better. And then if they keep doing as well as they are, maybe they will get a proper app up and running. But if I was in their shoes, if I launched an app, I would want to make sure it is seamless. Because if you launch an app and it really doesn't have any problems and you can execute it properly, then you can take over the events really, really well.
Yep.
So
And they make money off the like you using their stuff because that's what the surcharges are for.
yeah, I mean
Yep.
that's
Makes
100%
sense.
how they make money.
Yeah, which I'm okay with. Like, if your thing's gonna run, like I said, I love the NRG events strictly because I like using Melee better than the companion app or any other form.
Yeah, and maybe that's why. I mean, was the fees different for using the companion? Right?
No, they still had the regular fees and stuff.
Maybe it's not as much. I don't know. I don't know the back end cost for them.
Yeah,
I do. I will say, in regards to the fees for Melee, I appreciate that they reflect it on the entry, so then you know what money's going to the organizer and what money is going to Melee.
yes, because
So
it's
then
like
you aren't holding
$40
Melee.
plus or
Mhm. You're,
whatever.
you're you're not holding these organizers like accountable. Like if you paid $20 and $2 of that went to Melee, but you weren't aware of it, you're like, hey, this store is jipping me. They're not 100% price payout, and
Right.
really they are. So
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, I get that. Um,
yeah,
I know we have Indy coming up. I know you're not able to go. Indy's going to be interesting because it's going to be a good test for. I don't remember if Dallas is before or after Indy. I want to say it's after. Um, so
after it's after
so
that's
this
their April tournament.
they have a lot to prove at this next one because I don't think they ran it very well. This last one, they did a good job with the COVID proof of COVID testing um and or vaccination status. When
Okay.
we got down the stairs, they had tables set up where you had to show your proof and everything, and like your license to match the name on the stuff, and then they give you a wristband, and obviously the wristband's colors change each day. So obviously the service was still bad, but they did have Wi-Fi at the casino this time, which is helpful. But it still wasn't great because you
Kind of
couldn't.
has to happen, right?
But I couldn't like with my phone, I couldn't still couldn't text or make phone calls because I couldn't use my actual phone service
Right.
because
Yeah.
it's like a bomb shelter. But I
Yep.
was able to access pair. Well, I would have been able to access pairings. I could access pairings on Sunday because we use the Flesh and Blood website for all our pairings and stuff, which is awesome. Their pairing systems are actually really good for Flesh and Blood for online pairings and stuff. So I'm very appreciated that I got to do that on the Sunday, so I was able to do that. Without service, that wouldn't have been a thing. Which would have
Right.
been super awkward, by the way, since you can only submit results for Flesh and Blood on the actual website. They don't do paper pairings, so
Right.
that would have been a little awkward. You pretty much would have had to go up to the staff every single round and talk about an annoyance.
Yeah.
But the thing that worries me for indie guys is not only do they have a big 10K team tournament, all the side events, they're also running the calling events for Flesh and Blood. That's the Grand Prix events for Flesh and Blitz happening that weekend, and they start Saturday morning the same time as the team tournament's going to be getting set up. I'm
Yeah.
very nervous about how this event's going to go because they didn't do good with a lot of pressure on them at this tournament.
Yep.
I'm a
Yeah,
little
I mean,
nervous about it.
I'm gonna be optimistic and say, maybe it's gonna work out because they're gonna use this as a learning experience. That's what I do in business. If I do something as a trial, I get to go, this is what went bad, this is what we can improve.
Hmm.
Obviously, there's also the other side of it of, well, I mean, we did bad, but
It wasn't
we
our
made
fault.
money, and I mean, people are mad about it, but they also forgot about it by the following week, right? It's like the pharmaceutical approach of, yeah, we got fined $100 million, but we made 600 million. So is it really that big of a deal?
Do we
Not
care?
really, right?
Yeah.
So,
And you gotta look at what if they just don't think it was their fault? They're doing the whole WWE perspective, like, no, we didn't do anything wrong. That was just everyone
and
else's
they could.
fault.
That's a big problem, right? Like they very well could look at it that because if you look from a numbers perspective, it went great.
Yeah, numbers wise,
Attendance was off the charts. Everybody was left and right, spending money. I'm sure they probably had better sales than they've had in ages. So they probably had a low cost for their staffing as well because of minimized numbers and working through that. So if they look at it from a cost analysis, they could go, hey, this did really well. And if it did really well, we're going to run it back.
Yep.
We can improve some things here and there, but we're not going to improve it to do anything other than that. Now, I really do hope if they have multiple events that are similar that they run second flights of it. There really should just be a 10K A, 10K B, offset it by 30 minutes and run them. It's going to save them so much time logistically to do that because it's going to, like, the start and the end of each round, that's where your peak work times are, right? For any event, any round. So you, by offsetting it by 30 minutes, obviously there's going to be some delays and whatnot, so that could happen where they could start to like slowly catch up to each other.
Right.
But this would at least allow you to go, we're firing off this event, let's keep them running, keep them going, and then the team gets to go, hey, we're going to help that out with that. And the other thing you get to do with this that's really nice is, let's say you have a dedicated team A for the tournament and then a team B. If you have those peak periods, you can pull in some members over to help with that workload, and then it keeps things moving smoothly. And then you also have this with the scorekeepers. The scorekeepers that are working on it, they're offset by those 30 minutes. So then they get to focus on, hey, we're getting all the results for A, we're going to knock that out. Here's all the results for B, we can knock that out. So I don't know, it's just, to me, a better way to go about it.
No, that makes sense. The thing, like I was saying, in my opinion, if you're going to have a 10K tournament and you're capping at 400, when that caps, accept that it's capped. Just say your tournament capped. Unfortunately, if you want to do our tournament, register sooner. Like, just stick to your tournaments. Like, obviously, you don't have the capability of running 2 effective tournaments for a long tenure without it lasting till 1 in the morning.
Right.
They didn't know that.
Like,
That's the thing. They didn't
they
know
didn't
that
have-
they couldn't run it well. Yeah, maybe, but they also could go, we can improve it. Like I said, like, so that's the other way you can go about this. If they can go, we can do better. We added on this tournament late, and maybe we need to go. We are willing to add on a second flight of tournaments if we get enough registration by X date. But if not, we have to cap it because we won't be able to get the support staff necessary to make sure it runs smoothly. Some kind of logistical requirement for that, I think, would make sense. Or just plan it from the get-go. If it did this well, you should just be planning for it for the next one. So
Yeah. I don't get why they just don't run opens without coverage. It would just, like, the prize payout would still be the same as running 2 10Ks. Just do a 20K open. Like, you just, like, solve the same thing. Like, instead of doing 2 10Ks over the weekend, you could just do one large thing, like, boom. Because, I cannot imagine a world where those classics didn't just make tremendous amount of money when they were paying out in store credit.
I have to imagine these 10Ks make more money, though.
Oh, they
right?
do. Like, Alan, like, did the math. It's like 10K with a capped event, they made like 16,000. So just out those, and this ain't counting any of the side events, which is like essentially them printing free money.
Yeah.
Like they definitely made money off of this event, and this ain't even counting the vendors. The vendors probably made tremendous amounts of money. They always do, and that's the perk of doing these events in paper like this is because your vendors are the make or break. But I'm looking forward to giving them another crack in Indy. I don't know what I'm doing at the event yet, but I think it's gonna be a fun weekend regardless.
Right.
Yeah, I'm hoping that there's gonna be a bright future for SCG Con. Hopefully they suck it up and they can come and do one in Michigan somewhere.
That would be nice.
Like I don't expect them to. They don't really like coming to Michigan, but my selfish self wants them to. Because I would love a closer trip. Or Columbus would work too. I haven't been to Columbus for a tournament in so long. Like
I
I'm talking
love
about like
tournaments.
downtown Columbus. So I go
Mm-hmm.
to the market. That's
I
what
love that place.
the market. For those listening, if you haven't gone, get your ass to the market. It is an amazing place to be.
It is a really good place.
Yeah. Just Columbus is a good town. Good town
Mhm.
for tournaments. So I hope the SCG Con gets going. I know I got New York coming up in May for Flesh and Blood Pro Tour weekend I'm going to. I'm already locked in to go do that. So that should be super fun. Mentioning of Flesh and Blood, we're actually going to be having an interview on for the second half of this episode. And that's going to be the winner of the Flesh and Blood first battle hardened event ever. Was this past weekend at SCG Con that I did not do the greatest in, but I did gain a lot of experience. And I was telling Steven this. I do these events right now because they're like my big, large playtesting sessions.
Yep.
Since I don't have like a lot of people to test with,
Makes sense. Yep.
so I use these tournaments as learning experiences because I learned a lot from that tournament. Like I didn't. There's no way I played them perfectly. I can't imagine a world where I would have played close to perfect. But I did get to see a lot of things that I didn't know and that I have in my mind now that I can like adjust for the future. I'm actually tonight probably gonna go through and try to build this deck or whatever for the I have a PTQ Saturday over in Midland. It's like the Explorers Guild or something like that is the name of the store. I haven't been there myself.
Okay.
They have one there and one in Kalamazoo, but the Kalamazoo one is where all the good players are going, so we're just gonna avoid them, and we're gonna go over to Midland and play with the. They're probably still good players over there, but not as good as what's across that pond.
Sure.
We have, yeah.
Can't wait for you to get stomped.
Oh, I probably will get stumped. I don't expect to win, but
Uh,
I'd like to at least have a chance.
right.
Like, give me an opportunity. But yeah, we're gonna have the winner on. We're gonna do some deck techs up with him. We're gonna talk about some of his selections. He was playing a hero that just came out of the new set last week. So
Very
he
cool.
said, I'm gonna take this. It's like taking a new deck, a new archetype to an open or a GP the first weekend, and you just go and spike one of the PTQs or classics, and saying, hey, I'm just gonna spike it with a new one. Gonna see what got him on that. It's gonna be a fun interview. Me and Steven's gonna be conducting with him.
Very
we're
cool.
we're recording here on Tuesday the 15th. We're gonna be doing that with him on Wednesday the 16th. It's gonna be a good time. But yeah, I said we're gonna talk about this weekend. I'm gonna try to do the PTQ on Sunday for historic. I don't know if I want to play standard or not. I haven't made that decision. I feel like historic, I would need to get less of the new cards.
Right.
So that's what's drawing me in. I think with standard, I'd have to get a lot of the new cards, most likely, and I don't want to.
Probably true. Yeah.
Just to be honest, I just don't want to. I
Fair.
don't. I know Steven's got VGC this weekend.
Mhm.
For those that don't know, that's on Pokemon. Was that Sword and Shield? Is that the ones that
Yep.
you do?
Yep. That's yeah. There's a tournament for that this weekend. If you enter it, you get free shiny Galarian birds and Sword and Shield. So that's pretty awesome. So that's like why we're doing it. But you can also get like points towards their series that they have going on. And I'm hoping I'll actually do pretty well. I hit top 1,000 today and on their mythic ladder. So that was pretty sweet, especially for only playing the game for like 2 weeks. So
Yeah,
I'm yeah, I'm really enjoying it, and I really hope to continue to do these Pokemon tournaments and stuff. But yeah, I'm gonna do that, and then I'm also gonna do some of these PTQs for Magic as well. But I'm gonna focus a lot less on Magic on stream this week because I've got a lot of work I need to do with my teams for Pokemon, and I'm hoping to do pretty well in those. Whereas with Magic, like ultimately, if I play a historic PTQ, I could just play auras again, and I don't even really need to test it that much because it still just does the same thing it's done for the last year and a half. So
Right.
that's the good news.
Yeah, there are 4 of them this weekend. I want to see if I can do 2 to 3 of them.
Nice.
We've got Croakies, Kamigawa. That's on for us 5 a.m. on Saturday, and then there's the Hooglandia Open at noon Saturday, and that one's going to be Alchemy. And then Sunday, there's 2 of them there. That's a pretty short time frame, and that's why I don't think I'll be able to do both of them.
Yeah, that's
Sunday at
historic and
12.
standard, right?
Yeah, you have historic and standard both on there. I'm liking the fact that like the Croaky one's just free, so you just enter it. It's already like 3/4 of the way capped, which is kind of crazy.
Have you seen his following? I'm not shocked. He's probably the
Yeah,
number one
and it's
Magic
like
streamer.
1,000 some people, and it's already 725 players registered.
All right, let me
So,
phrase that. He's the number one arena streamer.
oh yeah,
Because I
for
think
sure.
Caleb Dover might have a running
Mhm.
as a number one streamer. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and then you have the Sunday. Those are both $5 tournaments, and those are the Pizza Box, and then the February D-Gen Open.
yeah.
Or
DGen
for
Open
Nintendo.
is the historic one, I believe, when I was
Yep,
looking.
and that one's gonna start at noon.
I know Hooglandia. What you have to do with him is subscribe to his Twitch channel.
Yeah, you have to have a subscription. I was just reading up on it actually to make sure if I wanted to. I'm gonna play it by ear. If I'm doing well, obviously in the Croaky one, that I won't be doing it.
Right.
But if I don't do as well, or because I mean it's early, so I might be tired. Um,
This is
and if
also
that's the case, it looks like I just have to verify my thing, and it's $5 for the Twitch subscription, so it's basically like a $10 tournament.
yep.
But yeah, your subscription has to go through Sunday in order to be able to qualify for it.
Which makes sense. The whole Hooglandia term.
Mhm.
That's what he pretty much. That's what you are if you're a follower or a subscriber. I should rather.
Yeah.
So and then he does he's been doing the Hooglandia tournaments for probably
Oh
like
yeah, he's
2
been doing
years
it quite
now.
some time.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And he usually does it like release weekend or like close to release weekend of some form. And it looks
Yep.
like he's doing alchemy for this one.
Yeah, it's and then next weekend we've got 3 tournaments too, which is cool.
Yep. I am keeping track of the attendance for NRG. Just to keep track, because last time I checked, there was not that many players registered for the NRG events. And if
They get to about 100 the day of, is
yeah,
what I've noticed.
yeah, so I like to keep track. If for some reason it did, like Saturday night, the limited one was still at between like 30 and 50 players, that would draw my attention a little bit.
For sure.
That would draw my attention to making the day trip to Milwaukee.
Oh yeah, you're talking about the Milwaukee. Yeah, we don't have that many people. I think there's only like one car going that we know of.
Yeah. Oh, I'm definitely not going for a whole weekend.
If any, because Nate's a maybe, and Dan's not going, and I don't think anyone else is going. Like I was talking.
Really? I thought Nate was trying to get a group going.
Maybe he is now, but he was not certain if he was going to go on like last Friday.
Oh man, probably should start thinking about the plans for the Chicago NRG tournament. It's only like 3 weeks away.
Oh wow!
Holy God!
Yeah, it's the first week of March. You realize?
Oh yeah, I got that Saturday off, so I'm planning to go to that one.
It's gonna be fun for me. So like, I have to. So I'm gonna try to leave a little bit early on Friday to drive there, crash there that night. I'm not doing the whole driving in the morning thing because it's too much. So just gonna do that. Pay whoever wants to go with me. I'll do it that night, and stay there, and then do the event Saturday and Sunday. I have to drive back Sunday most likely because Friday. Not Friday. Monday I have to fly out to DC for a conference.
Travel City right there. Well, just know if you're trying to go, I already got that day requested off, so I'm looking for people that's trying to go.
Yeah, we'll work out the details here. I wanted to post some stuff for the team first, so make sure people are aware of that, and then I'll probably post the organizing that. I didn't want to intrude on the people that are still trying to make something happen for Milwaukee,
Yeah, no, that's
because
fair.
otherwise it will just completely encapsulate that and they'll disappear. So
Oh no, 100%. That's how Discord messaging works. But yeah,
exactly.
we're going to put a bow on this part of it. People that's listening, stay tuned for the special interview that we're gonna have, where we're gonna take for the very first time on this episode, this show of Talking Swish. We're actually gonna take a nice little dive into flesh and blood. But until next time, Dewey, we'll catch you later.
Have a good one.
All right, everyone. Talking Swish here. Steven and Dewey will not be here with us tonight. They both had some obligations. So I'm going to be conducting this interview. We have the first Battle Hardened Champion here with us today. Those that don't know what Battle Hardened is, because we typically have a lot of Magic players that follow us, that is, for the lack of better terms than Magic equivalents, is a PTQ that you would have at your Grand Prix events. They held one over at SCG Con in Philadelphia over the weekend. And we have our first champion here today. Charles, how are you doing today?
I'm doing just wonderful. Still kind of riding that high off the win over the weekend. So really excited to be here and talking with you, talking about Flesh and Blood, and let's get into it.
Yep, I know you just you won the event because I was at SCG Con over the weekend. I played in the same tournament with you. I didn't want to come up to you right after the event because I've won one of those PTQs. I know how grueling they are. You're riding this high that you just won this huge event to take you to your next step in competitive TCG. So I wanted to wait it out, let you enjoy it for a moment before I reach out and be like, hey, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about it because I haven't been playing Flesh and Blood like religiously because I still play Magic, obviously. That's what initially drew me out this weekend, but there was a Flesh and Blood PTQ, so I was like, hey, I'm going to get an opportunity to play some Flesh and Blood. I'm going to do that as well. Obviously, didn't have as good of a run as you did, but that's fine. So we're going to talk a little bit about Flesh and Blood and talk about the tournament, but I want to talk a little bit about you. Is this the first TCG that you've actually played?
No, I've been playing TCGs since, I was like 5 years old or something.
Oh, okay.
I actually, my parents, taught me to read as a little kid by reading Pokemon trading cards. So
that
they
is
came out
awesome.
right about the time I was learning how to read. So, I've been playing cards since I was a kid. I played Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, WoW TCG, and a whole slew of digital games. I've played card games.
Okay.
So Flesh and Blood being the most recent one, obviously,
right,
and probably the one that I've had the most immediate gripping fun playing. Other ones, I kind of got into it over time, and then Flesh and Blood is I played in one tournament, and I'm like, oh my god. So, yeah, and really excited to have taken down kind of one of the first bigger tournaments that I've played in for it.
That's awesome. Yeah, TCGs. I remember playing Pokemon when I was around 10, and that's what got me into TCGs. And it was awesome because it actually does expand your reading level too, because you're reading all these different cards. Obviously, Magic took it to another level because Magic's a little more in depth than Pokemon was. So it's funny that you talk about Flesh and Blood. After that first gamer tournament got you. That's how Flesh and Blood was for me. I heard about the game during the pandemic, but then Channel Fireball announced that they were going to take and handle all the calling events. And I was like, well, Channel Fireball is going to take and back them. They're not going to back something to lose money. So maybe, because I'm a little skeptical with these new games, because you get these games that come and go, like Argent Saga, Force of Will, just to name a few.
Yeah, well, believe it or not, my friend who got me into it, Pat Eschke, who ended up getting top 4 at this event.
Oh, awesome.
My best friend, he got me into the game. But he had actually played it with another friend of ours, Nino, many years ago, right when Flesh and Blood first came out. They had alpha starter decks, and they're just like, oh yeah, let's play this new game, and they tried it, and I didn't really like it. They actually just threw the decks away. They're like, this is gonna be one of those dead games or something.
Yep.
And then it kept on picking up steam. They tried it again. They're like, oh my gosh, still hooked on it. Something clicked that second time they tried it, and then they ended up getting me into it. So I totally see where you're coming from. You're not sure, is this going to be the next big thing? And I think it is. I really do think it will be.
And I think the benefit that they have is they got this sweet Pro Tour scene, which we're going to be talking about. And they're holding the first one out in New Jersey. and they make the structure pretty easy to follow. You have a good understanding. I've been grinding Magic for many years, and they don't make it very easy to understand on the outside. It feels like calculus every time I'm trying to figure out how to get back to the Pro Tour. So this is like a fresh air, and thankfully, not thankfully, thankfully isn't the right term, but Flesh and Blitz has a great opportunity because Magic doesn't really have a Pro Tour right now. They're not doing the paper grind for pros and stuff anymore. And now Flesh and Blood's kind of filling that void. And the gameplay is just very unique. It feels like it's very well designed. I like it where it is. And I like their whole handling of the cards when something's getting a little out of hand. I thought they have done a really good job with that. It feels like kind of opposite of what Magic does. Like, I'm not trying to just hammer on Magic, but I can be unbiased opinion that Magic's been pretty bad the last few years.
Of course. I mean, that's part of what drew me into it as well. Like, I had played, I mean, reasonably competitive. I never actually played on the Pro Tour in Magic, but I had a lot of friends who did. I played in a number of Grand Prix. So, like, I was familiar with high-level Magic. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and I kind of fell out of favor with playing in paper tournaments, obviously. And then Magic just kind of went in a direction that did not really support that. You know, they shifted their focus to online and arena, which makes sense from their business perspective. But as somebody who liked going in and playing in those tournaments, I kind of had that void in me, you know, like, hey, I want to do this.
Yep.
And so when Flesh and Blood announced their, you know, kind of roadmap for a big organized play program with the call-ins and the Pro Tours and World Championships and all that stuff, and really good price support as well to kind of be on par with what Magic used to do, you know, it was instantly appealing to me from a competitive standpoint, but then also, you know, the core gameplay of the game is still really engaging as well.
Yep. And I 100% agree with you. I think the gameplay is sweet. And one like breath of fresh air. I'm not trying to say there's no variance in this game, but the comparison of variance is it's nice compared to like Pokemon and Magic where you have the land or the energy basis behind it. This has like a whole different like model, which I think is very cool. Next week on the on our podcast, we're actually gonna be doing like our first like actual deep dive into Flesh and Blood because we got one of my partners on the podcast. He's only played like 2 Blitz games with me. When that first game, I want him to at least touch it. Then we have another one that has never touched a card, so it's gonna be like kind of a teaching him Flesh and Blood kind of session, which is gonna be super fun. And I think the game is actually quite easy to learn. And I think it's one of the easy to learn, hard to master kind of games, which I find intriguing myself.
Yeah, it is. And that's obviously the golden standard of a game is you should be able to pick it up and be able to play and make meaningful decisions relatively quickly, but hard to really get to that depth. And I kind of agree. It did take me a few times playing through to really kind of grasp it because I came from that kind of Magic mindset of like the concept of like pitching cards and when you have action points it was not immediately intuitive to me, but you know once I actually played through a full game or two, like it was very quick. I do remember like in my early couple games, once I knew the rules, I knew what my options were, but I would just like be staring at my hand and be like, I don't know what I should do because there's so many options, there's so many ways I could play that I didn't know what the right answer was. Whereas in Magic, it was pretty obvious. Like, okay, I play my land. Oh, I've got a single card that costs 2 this turn. I'll play that, right? Like,
Yep.
Completely opposite of Flesh and Blood. You've got a lot more options than that.
Yep, you have a lot more options. And the thing with Flesh and Blood, your turn ones will make you think about your future turns way more than I think Magic typically will. Like Magic, sure, you'll be playing a 2-drop next turn. But next turn, I could be playing 4 cards, all I know, when it comes to Flesh and Blood.
Or you might be blocking out with your hand. You might be doing nothing.
Exactly.
It's you have a lot of, or some variant in between there. Just so many different ways you can play any given hand, and you get a brand new hand every turn. Unlike Magic, where you're just drawing 1 card per turn.
Yep. And yeah, the drawing 4 at the end of turn, and it makes blocking actually like you have to pay the block essentially, which is very, very cool. I like the aspect, and then you got like the different things like the Dorinthia decks, for example, kind of has those reprise ability that you have to think about. And just like the whole like maneuvering, I like that there's a whole bunch of different archetypes. And I usually, when I'm explaining the archetypes, I compare them to Magic. For example, Wizards is essentially Burn, even though it's like not like Burn in Magic, where it's probably one of the harder decks to play in Flesh and Blood. I've heard. I've never actually attempted it myself.
Yeah, I coming from a Magic background, I have that intuition to be like, oh, this is an aggro deck, this is a control deck, this is a burn deck or whatever. But I mean, maybe that's good for like initial communication of what you're trying to do. But I found that the more and more you get into Flesh and Blood, the more that really breaks down. I mean, you still generally have like aggressive decks that don't want to block, they want to just attack, and then you have defensive decks that want to block and not attack too much.
Yep.
But outside of that, I mean, the traditional like aggro control mid range, I feel like that comparison really breaks down because they're just such a fundamentally different game.
Yep. No, I 100% agree. I like using those terms for like just the Magic players that don't touch Flesh and Blood, but you could tell like when you have two Flesh and Blood players talking about like strategies and gameplay, it's a little bit different than when I'm talking to Steven, for example, who doesn't play a ton of Flesh and Blood, and the best way to explain it to him is in the equivalence of Magic, because obviously that's what he knows. Now, Flesh and Blood's been out for quite some time. When would you say you actually got into Flesh and Blood?
Pretty recently, actually. There was a calling in Cincinnati back in October, I think, of last year.
Yep,
that was
October.
the first tournament I played in.
Okay.
I had learned to play the game about a week or two beforehand. My friend Pat taught me it on Tabletop Simulator.
Okay.
So I really was like, literally, I went to the calling, and that was the first time I touched physical cards of it. And then pretty much just instantly got hooked after that weekend. So just a few months, and been loving every minute of it, really.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was going to go to Cincinnati, but unfortunately I had some personal situations come up that prevented me from doing so. But I did go to Vegas. So I did get to attend that calling. That was my very first like big tournament outside of the Road to Nationals that we had here in Michigan. And the event was like super fun. I was very excited to play. I played a lot. I drafted the whole weekend in Vegas after the main event because I didn't end up day twoing. And I just spent the whole weekend drafting because I wanted to learn how to draft. And I really like the whole like how drafting is in this game, where when you're like drafting your heroes and things of that nature. I think it's very interesting. And I'm very big on limited, so when I first started playing, I played nothing but limited formats and limited games. Helped me build my card collection, in addition to learning the game. I hate Blitz. I don't know what's your. Do you have a? I was like, do you have a favorite format, or is it just pretty much?
I don't really. I mean, I've played Tales of Aria Sealed because that's what the set when it came out and I started playing. And then I've played Classic Constructed because I've always had like a more tournament focused mindset. Like I want to go and play in tournaments, and so the upcoming or the ProQuest season that's coming up and the callings are all Classic Constructed. So that's what I've been playing. If they were Blitz, I would be playing Blitz. But I play whatever the next tournament is, and that's kind of how I'll approach the game.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I've played like Blitz. They do them at like little local armory events and things of that nature. But I have the same mindset. I've been grinding Magic so long where I have a goal, and that's try to get back to the Pro Tour. And now my goal is to make my first Pro Tour eventually here in Flesh and Blood. Unfortunately, I don't really have a testing group in person. So my testing sessions comes from going to these Battle Hardened and ProQuest events.
Sure.
That's why I actually use Philadelphia. It was my first per tournament since Vegas. So I was quite rusty right now. And I played all 6 rounds, even though I knew I was dead after like round 2, only because I needed the reps. I feel like reps are priceless, especially with a newer game that you're still learning.
Yeah, they are. I had a pretty good testing group. We played a lot on Tabletop Simulator just because we're to be remote and get a lot of games in just in the evening, and especially with the new set that just came out with Everfest just last week, 2 weeks ago. I don't know exactly when, but. It's super valuable, especially after a new set releases, to just get as many games in as possible and see what the new cards are all about.
Yep, and that's what I haven't had the chance to actually try Tabletop Simulator. I know people have talked to me about Tabletop Simulator and also Felt Table, I believe it's called.
Yeah, I haven't tried Felt Table. I just use TTS.
Okay, I think I'm gonna eventually like jump into Tabletop Simulator. I know a lot of people are very high about it. It's better for getting your testing in if you aren't able to get it with like in-person groups. Obviously, that'll always be like the number way to test. But if you can't, digital, similar to how Magic does their digital form. Thankfully, tabletop simulators a thing out there nowadays. Now let's talk a little bit, transition over to the tournament this weekend. So SCG Con and that gets the honor of actually hosting some Flesh and Blood going forward. They're doing the very first Battle Hardened event because it originally was called ProQuest, but they changed it since they're doing all the ProQuests in stores.
Mm-hmm.
So the event's coming. Everfest just dropped like a week ago at this point. Maybe 2 weeks if my memory's not correct. It's very new. Probably the first tournament that we're going to get to see the Everfest cards in action. I expect a lot of the new heroes to see some action, especially one. And that's what you landed on. What brought you to your deck selection?
So obviously I played the one hero from Everfest, Bravo Star of the Show. That was a classic constructed hero. There was other heroes in Everfest, but they were just Blitz only heroes, young heroes. But I mean, Everfest being a supplemental set, it gave some cards to every class. You know, you had some Ranger cards, some Runeblade cards. You know, a little bit of stuff for everything. But I think even just like looking at the spoiler of the full set, you could tell that like Guardian was pretty got like a larger slice of the pie. They got the new hero, obviously. They got a legendary, and they got the Fabled. So they got a lot of tools in this set, and the hero Bravo Star of the Show is the hero that has like the most or the largest card pool of legal cards that he can play out of any hero in the game. Just like if you just ask like what can this hero play, he has the highest number, and that's always an intriguing concept compared to something like Magic, where everybody can always play every card in Magic, or at least every card legal in that format. But in Flesh and Blood, your hero selection determines what card pool you have available, and so picking the hero that has the biggest card pool is just naturally going to be advantageous over picking something like Merchant, which has like no card pool.
Right. Which I think that looks like we're gonna have a group hug deck coming if we have to again use like Magic terms. That's what everyone's hyping right now online, at least from what I've seen. But so you went with Bravo Star of the Show, and that name fit perfectly because talk about the star of the show at SCG Con over the weekend. Was it 6 slots or 5 slots?
Five out of the top 8.
Yep, because I forgot there was that one Runeblade in the 8th slot that snuck in there.
Yep, there was a Briar and 2 Chains were the other ones. So 3 Runeblades and 5 Bravos in the top 8. And he definitely was the star of the show. I think a lot of players kind of gravitated to the same way I did, realizing that, hey, this is the new hotness, and this is going to be the deck of the tournament, especially when people aren't prepared and don't really know what he's about compared to other heroes that have been in the format for longer. You kind of knew what they would do when you sat down against Bravo. It was going to be a brand new experience for a lot of players.
Yep, and that's what I was telling people, and they were all hyping. They're like, "Yo, there was 5 in." I was like, "It looks like something's going to need to be banned." I'm like, let's calm down for a second." I was like, "Been down this hole in Magic plenty of times where you get this new aggressive archetype." I'm not saying this archetype's aggressive, but in Magic, you would play the aggressive archetype because you got a lot of decks that isn't tuned to play up against that deck, and it takes advantage of that. And I think that's might be what Bravo did. Not saying Bravo won't continue its success like this. It's very possible. But,
yeah, I think it will. I mean, biased, obviously.
Yeah.
But we tested quite a bit leading up to this event, and like I had a Lexi, a Ranger deck that I was like this close to playing because I thought it was really good against everything except Bravo, and because my friend Pat was playing Bravo in our playtest session, and I just couldn't beat him. It was an abysmal matchup, and I'm like, well, I think like I don't know what beats Bravo, and I think it's really good. We've tried a lot of things, and so that's what we settled on. And yes, I'm obviously glad I did, but I think that also means that you need to do a whole lot of testing and a lot of theory crafting to figure out something that beats this deck. Because right now, I don't know what beats it.
No, that's fair. And obviously, Chain didn't get the job done because that's who you took down in the finals. Which,
Yep.
I ain't gonna lie, I'm still a little shocked that there was 2 Chain. I didn't think Chain. I've been not very convinced about Chain lately.
So it's interesting you say that. I've heard a similar sentiment from a lot of people. I think like over on another podcast, Arsenal Pass, they talked about some of the heroes, and they're like, yeah, Chain probably the worst of the rune blades, and I think a lot of players had this perception of they played when Chain was dominant, which was before I started. They played when Seeds of Agony was legal.
Yep.
I think that's the card.
That's when I played it.
Yeah, and I didn't, so I didn't have that like preconceived bias of like, oh, this is what Chain used to be. I see Chain for what he is now, and I'm very impressed with it. Especially my opponent in the final, Daniel. I was very impressed. I played him in the Swiss. I played him in the finals. I also played him in a side event Saturday, and I was very impressed with him, his play, and his deck. And I'm like, yeah, Chain's a really good deck. And then I see all these people talking about it online, being like, oh yeah, Chain, not very good. And I just think they're taking crazy pills. I'm like, Chain's insane. What are you talking about? And I think the results kind of bore that out, that Chain is definitely still a deck that can compete in the meta. I mean, Daniel took down 2 other Bravos in the top 8 before I knocked him out. So, I mean, he went 2-1 against Bravos in the top 8.
Which is, making the finals is still making the finals. That's a hell of a run. Like, not trying to take anything away from him. Heck of a run. Chain, obviously, in his hands was very good. And I will say, seeing 2 copies in the top 8 does, like, make me want to at least, like, look at it again. Compared to when and I will agree with you, like, a lot of us that did get to play Chain back when it was, like, the broken version of Chain. I just didn't know, without having Seeds and Plunder run, if it would still be that deck. Because it's playing cards that just, like, caught me off guard, like, the tutor card. I can't think of the name of it offhand.
Belittle and Minnowism?
Yeah.
That combo?
Yeah.
It's funny. That's actually how I beat Daniel in the Swiss. I played him in round 5, or round 4, I guess actually it was. He was like, he basically no blocked, said, I'll just take it, because clearly he's setting up for a big turn on the backswing.
Yep.
And then he has like 5 Soul Shackles, so he banishes 5 cards from his deck, and he hits both of his tutor targets, the Minnowisms. He only had 2 in the deck, and he was going to play the card to tutor for it. So like his turn just like got completely crushed because he just suddenly didn't have 2 of those copies. So that was really unlucky. I mean, that's what happens with Chain sometimes. But if that didn't happen, maybe our game goes a different way. I don't know. But it certainly would have been a lot closer than it was in the Swiss round there.
Yeah, that is the downside of playing those kind of effects, is you're playing a little higher variance now. But the power of them, Chain, with the Soul Shackles is just so good. And you can only imagine what it was like with Seeds. It was just insane. Oh, man. But yeah, I played against Chain in the Swiss, and it was fine. I felt like I won pretty easily, mainly because I just was able to keep Blood Dead in his deck. And I was playing Dorinthia over the weekend, so I'm a little more aggressive as well at the same time. So I was turning his Blood Dead into like a true debt, which was helpful. Plus, I play against Chain because one of our buddies that I only got to do a little bit of testing last week, and one of the decks I played against was Chain. And actually, funny enough, it was your star of the show, because they were playing Tariq Patel's list that he had up on channel Fireball, I believe he writes for. But yeah, I expected Bravo Star of the Show to be a big representation, being a new deck, and obviously I made the right call. I wasn't going to try to put it together like at the last second with no testing, but I knew that it was something I needed to be ready for, and I think a lot of players needed to. So you went and registered it. Was this a list that you guys came up on your own? Were you taking somebody's stock list and like tuning it?
Yeah. So me and Pat Eschke, we were testing this. We had a Bravo list, pretty much like since the spoilers all came out. Like we'd been running this list and testing it for quite a while, and it's just been like constantly tweaked. And so we recognized pretty early on that he was really strong. Whenever he hit his fusion, he could do a lot of stuff. We were actually running a version that had like Showtime, the other Bravo specialization in it. And Pat was really sold on that one for a while, and I'm just like, I wasn't sold on it. I'm just like, Pat, can we cut those like over and over again for more elemental cards? But so we've been messing around with this list for quite a while, and we recognize that power. And so whenever we kind of came to the conclusion that if we recognize this power, other people obviously have to. And when the whispers came out of one of the there was a tournament that somebody went 8-0 with Bravo in, and then the Rick Patel posted that list, his article, like it was very clear, like, okay, people are going to be playing Bravo. And luckily we had already tested it a whole lot. We knew kind of what the deck was and what we wanted it to be, and we could kind of identify the list that we saw from other people, that like what we thought were shortcomings in that list, like, oh, we don't think that's optimal based on our testing. And so, and because we knew that people would be playing it a whole lot, which was true, that it was the most represented deck, we specifically tuned our version to be quite good into the mirror match, which I don't think a lot of other people considered. I think a lot of other people just kind of ran the list that was either a stock list or just, you know, what they thought was best against the other decks, and we were really specifically targeting the mirror match and had a plan going into the tournament.
Okay, and I think obviously it was a good call, especially with how the top 8 panned out. And the tournament in general, I think I seen a lot of the start to show decks up at the upper tables when I was walking around between rounds. So you geared up for the mirror match. You said, hey, I'm just going to focus on being good in the mirror, and then we'll have a plan for the additional matchups. That's what sideboards are for.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have too terribly much of a sideboard. But like, we definitely thought the deck was just really, really strong against the field. Like we said, we tested against most of the other meta decks that we could think of and build, and like Bravo felt really good into all of them. So we're like, we don't really need too much of a sideboard plan against them, because like our core deck kind of handled it, at least as far as we could tell. And so most of our decision for the rest of the deck was like, well, how do we get an edge in the mirror match, which is something that worked out very well for us over the course of the tournament.
Yep, like I said, obviously you were able to take it down with this updated list. So I have your list up in front of me. You said that you cut the specialization card, that you were able to convince them that was not where you wanted to be.
Yeah, Showtime. Yep. It was a cool card. It was like, so it's a 3-cost aura that searches your deck for any guardian attack action, and then at the start of next turn it draws you a card. So it's good to like set up bigger turns, but the core problem was that it wasn't an elemental card, right? It didn't contribute to his fusion, which was kind of the main draw of Bravo, star of the show.
Right.
And so he's all about setting up big turns, but Showtime draws the card after you have a chance to reveal for the fusion, so it didn't really help you achieve fusion. And so we ended up just kind of cutting that out and just adding in more elemental cards, upping the count across the board there, and just getting more consistent activations of Bravo, star of the show.
Okay. So, let's talk about one of the new mechanics that's in some of your cards. Talk to you about Heave. How did you like the Heave mechanic?
Heave. So Heave's really cool. It's on Pulverize. When we were playing the Showtime version, we were running the Thunderquake, the blue 8-attack Heave card, just as like a tutor target for it. So Heave's really interesting. It once again kind of lets you set up a bigger turn next turn by spending some extra resources. Now, when you go to Arsenal, you put it down your Arsenal, and you also get some Seismic Surge tokens to set up for next turn. And that's particularly good on turn 1, whenever you don't really want to make an attack, because they can kind of freely block because you both draw back up. So it's really good as like a setup turn there. And it's also just generally good in the early game when you can afford to say, okay, I'm going to heave like a Pulverize into my Arsenal, and no matter what your opponent does, you just take it. You just no block it, because you've got 40 life. They're not going to do 40 to you. And then you can come back with the biggest attack in the game. And if you try to heave something later on in the game, when you're, say, down at like 15 life or 20 life or something, they might put a lot of pressure on you that you now need to block them, and therefore you can't actually pitch to get up to the 7 that you need to cast Pulverize after heaving it. And then now you're never going to cast it, because now it costs 10. You have the Seismic Surge discount. So Heave is definitely a mechanic that is much, much better in the early game, and you almost never want to do it past kind of the mid game, depending on life totals, of course.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. So typically, I've been noticing, like, in Flesh and Blood, there's, like, a lot of argument online about going first or second, because, for those that don't know, when you go first in Flesh and Blood, no matter what, both players on turn 1 gets to draw back to their hand size. So typically, like, being aggressive turn 1 can be a little awkward when they can, like, somewhat freely block. It isn't, like, completely free, obviously, because you still do have to, like, use cards out your hand and all that nature.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting debate that I think is very deck dependent, which is refreshing. Unlike games like Magic, where it's like
You always want to go first.
you go first like 99% of the time, right? In Magic, like maybe there's some niche scenarios in Limited where you're like, oh yeah, I kind of want to go second in this. Flesh and Blood is super deck dependent. I think a lot of times, like aggressive decks, things like Briar or Chain or other decks that just like want to be attacking and don't want to be blocking, they actually prefer to go second because then you get to make the first meaningful attack, the first attack that you don't get to you block for free basically. So you kind of get tempo in that sense. Whereas it was just like super weird coming from a Magic perspective, like, oh, you want to go first if you're aggro. Whereas other decks that kind of do like a setup, kind of like old Bravo, where you could use like Showtime or other kinds of setup things, or do other like things that aren't attacking your opponent, maybe deploying an aura or things like that. They want to go first a lot of times because you can kind of do that and your opponent doesn't get to do that free block. You're just doing a setup turn instead. So going first is better in that case.
Nope, I agree with you there. I know I was talking because I was actually playing Dorinthia and I like going second for most of my matchups because I get to do the first meaningful like attack and start doing my thing. And I was talking to Steven, for example, and he said he was just like so dumbfounded over the idea because I'm playing more of an aggressive deck, and I was like, man, I'm not winning die roll so I can go second.
Yeah, it's interesting because like the Bravo deck that I played, we want to go first almost all the time because just the chance that you get to use a dominate attack on the first turn, that negates their ability to block, right? If you are attacking for 7 dominate, well, they can only block with 1 card, so you're going to force through damage, and they don't get to really take advantage of that. So if I'm playing Bravo against your Dorinthia, like it doesn't matter who wins the roll, I'm going to go first, you're going to go second, right? Because if you choose that, or if you recognize that I get a bigger advantage for going first than you get for going second, maybe you switch it. So it is very context dependent, very deck dependent, and like who gets a bigger advantage out of what, that'll change for every single matchup.
Yep, on my sideboard guide that I write up for myself, I actually have it listed on there, like what option I want for that matchup. Because there's some matchups I just don't want my opponent setting up on turn 1, so I want to take that opportunity away from them. But yep, jumping into some of this, I see you guys have a lot of equipment. You guys decided to go heavy on the equipment. What made you come up with that decision?
Yeah, it was funny. Actually, when we were all done with the list, even before we played in the tournament, we were joking with each other, me and Pat and our friend Josh, who was helping us test. We were like, when people see this list, they're just going to be like, holy crap, that's a lot of equipment. And it's true. It's true. People did say that. Yeah, so we basically started with the core principle of Bravo was that you need to maintain a certain amount of ratios of your elemental card, right? You need to have X amount of earth, ice, and lightning, and you really don't want to shave that too much. You can't just be like, oh, I'm going to take out 5 ice cards for this matchup. Like, you just can't do that, right? Because that just ruins the whole deck.
Yeah, so, your percentage points are down too much at that point to make your star of the show actually effective.
Right. Make the fusion happen. So from that perspective, we knew that the main deck, whatever your kind of core set of elemental cards is, you can't really change it that much. I mean, maybe you can shave 1 or 2 here and there, but you can't make like big sweeping changes like you could in other decks where it's like, oh, I've got a 40 card core and then I bring in these 15 here and these 15 there. We just couldn't do that. So with that in mind, we said, well, what can we change? What can we sideboard? Well, equipment. Equipment can be freely changed. It doesn't affect your fusion. And I think equipment has the biggest impact in a lot of matchups because it's a card that you start with in play. You always have it. So if you have an equipment that's really good into a matchup, that's just a card that you guarantee always have. So that's why we opted heavily into equipment as our sideboard options, because it wouldn't affect the main deck. And I think equipment as sideboard slots are just higher impact than a regular card in your deck sideboard slot.
I can agree there, and I like that whole like angle that you're attacking them on, because I don't think typically a lot of people go with that route. Typically, you have a lot of you'll have like more than just your base equipment, obviously, but there's a lot of people that'll play. For example, the Dorinthia list that I played was, I think, I only played like 2 extra equipment. And then
Yeah,
it just played a bunch of other cards, like a lot of defense reactions and stuff in the sideboard.
It's also a unique situation that Guardian just has a lot of really good equipment. I mean, the other
That's
class
true.
that I play a lot is Ranger. Ranger does not have a lot of good equipment. Ranger has like a couple things that are kind of core to what they're trying to do,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of other classes do that where it's like, hey, like New Horizons is just super core to playing Voltaire Ranger. Like you just need that. Like Bloodsheath Skeleton, that is a required item for things like Viscerai, because like
Mm-hmm.
that's what they're all about, is using this for its effect, and then it does a big combo or something. Guardian and this Bravo list in particular didn't have any like core pieces that absolutely could not be changed, other than I guess the weapon, just because there's no better weapon than Winter's Wail.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the other stuff was just like armor, situational, like interact with your opponent, and not something that I am trying to proactively use. Unlike a lot of other classes that just have to have a certain item slot locked in.
Yep. And I'm going through some of your equipment. I noticed that typically I've seen like every single list almost plays this card, but you guys did not, and that's Arcane Skullcap. Not the equipment
Yeah,
that was like fitting. You would think that with all your equipment that you're playing 11 pieces, Skullcap would have been one of them.
yeah. I
Reason?
mean, Skull. Oh, good.
No, I was just
Uh,
gonna ask like reasoning for or against it, I should say.
yeah. So it was definitely a consideration. It was brought up a few times in testing. Is like, okay, can we just add in Skullcap? The Skullcap is fine. It's fine into certain matchups. It's basically a 2 block and then a 1 block. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what it is. Like it has Arcane Barrier 3, I guess, which is like not really relevant. So the issue with that is uh, you want to be using Crown of Seeds a lot in this deck. Probably not as much as people think, but you still want to be doing it a lot, because it basically lets you filter a card out and draws you an extra card. So if at the end of your turn you're like, okay, I've got an extra, you know, card that I just don't want, I'm going to put it down in my arsenal, and then I'm going to use it to draw something new for next turn, and then suddenly you get to basically filter your hand out, and like if you're missing one piece of the fusion, you get an extra redraw with information. Like if you have an earth and an ice card, well, you can throw away something, you can pitch it to activate Crown of Seeds, and maybe draw into the lightning card you need to complete your fusion.
Mm-hmm.
So Crown of Seeds is pretty important in that regards, but not so important that we could never consider cutting it. But it ultimately just came down to like Crown of Seeds was like pretty good in every scenario where you'd want Arcane Skullcap. Crown of Seeds is functionally a 1 extra block at any point in the game, anytime that you want to pitch to it. So it fulfilled a pretty similar niche, and I think that extra card cycling was just worth it enough that we just said, yeah, we're just going to keep Crown of Seeds in at all times.
Okay. Like I said, I definitely see people playing the Skullcap, and the more I've played it recently, I've been a little less sold on Skullcap because I don't know. It's obviously a good card. Not trying to make the argument that, hey, don't play it. It's obviously like in every list for a reason. But I do like that you weren't forcing yourselves to play it just because it is Arcane Skullcap.
Yep.
Uh,
And I think that's a common trend with our deck building, Pat and my deck building on this, was
Mhm.
that both of us are both pretty new to Flesh and Blood, all things considered. I mean, we both kind of started around the same time last year, and we like don't kind of listen to conventional wisdom on a lot of the cards and a lot of the deck choices. It's just like we're going to judge it for our own eyes, and if people think, especially the deck list, like you're kind of joking that once this deck list gets out, people are going to be like, those are some weird choices, and I stand by every single choice we made in the deck, and people are going to be like, oh, this is card super weird, and I'm like, nope, it has 100% has a purpose. We thought it through it. We strongly considered every spot in the deck, and have a justification and reason for each and every one of them.
It makes sense to me. I know probably the card that's up there, at least in price with Skullcap, is going to be the Spring Tunic. A
Yeah.
very popular card among a lot of decks. Even I play it obviously in Dorinthia because the card is quite good there. So I definitely
Yeah.
know Spring Tunic. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm assuming it's just so valuable just to have the extra pip when you're trying to play your bigger spells. It's essentially like a Seismic Surge token, right?
Well, actually, it's not as useful as you might think for a
Okay.
lot of decks compared to, like, say, Dorinthia. For instance, Dorinthia uses it every third turn, you basically get a fourth resource, and suddenly that means, oh, now I can swing with the weapon an extra time because you got that extra resource to pay, or maybe I can play this one extra card instead of pitching it. In this deck, pretty much what it means is I can activate Crown of Seeds for free. That's all it does. Like it allows you to activate Crown of Seeds without pitching every third turn. Because most of the attacks in the deck are all 3-cost attacks. There's no 4-cost attacks. They're just 3s across the board, or things like 5 or 10 or 7. Like there's no 4s, so we're not really looking to cast a 4-cost attack. And so that's where Tunic in this deck really just works as a free Crown of Seeds activation to get a 5-card hand at some point every 3 turns.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, being able to activate seeds for free is pretty busted in the right situation. That's quite nice.
I mean, drawing 5 cards basically takes your odds to hit the Bravo fusion ability. It you wouldn't think, but it almost doubles it from what you would get on a 4-card hand.
Yeah.
Like if you just pick any random 4 cards and ask, does this 4 card have fusion? And as opposed to picking any random 5 cards, the odds go up almost double. So that's a really powerful thing to be able to do kind of on demand.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely in for that. The other ones, I see a lot of your newer cards that's going to be out of Everfest. And the one thing that I see here, if I can pull it up, if I can actually... It's a term that you don't see too much, and it's called offhand. What does that mean exactly? Because I haven't touched the offhand cards yet.
Yeah, so I mean, every hero in the game so far has 2 hands, right? So you can use an item, one in each hand. So I think Guardian's really the only one that does it right now. You can have a main hand weapon as long as it is a one-handed weapon, and then you have it offhand. It could be something like a shield or an arcane lantern. Or you can use 2 copies of Winter's Wheel. That is a legal play because it's a one-handed weapon. So you could dual wield Winter's Whale if you were so inclined. The situations where that is relevant is almost non-existent, but it is a legal play, and we have thought about it. But no, so Guardian is super powerful in the fact that they get to run 2 relevant, like they basically get to run 6 pieces of equipment, whereas a lot of other decks just get to run 5.
Right.
And so it's just a huge advantage to be able to have that extra like armor slot as a shield. Like you now can block more with more equipment, and then you also just have like more effects that you have access to, specifically with things like Stalagmite or Rampart of Ram's Head or the extra arcane barrier on your shield.
Yep. And yeah, the extra arcane ability is sweet, but obviously Rampart of Ram's Head, definitely, probably, it's obviously legendary. Usually legendary means it's going to be pretty sweet in some form, and I don't think Rampart of Ram's Head is an exclusion to that. You know, you're defending it, you could pay and just like, you pay a pip really quick, which, come to find out, that's probably really good with Spring Tunic as well. You definitely, you can. It's obviously you're still doing your seeds thing.
Sure. So I did not play Rampart of Ram's Head a single time all weekend.
Oh.
And I was borrowing my copy that I had in my deck list from my friend, and I gave it back to him at the end of the event, of course. I do not own a copy of Rampart of Ram's Head, and I'll be playing Bravo this weekend without it.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. Yes, it is a good card. But it comes back to what I mentioned earlier about kind of that established wisdom, that like conventional wisdom, like, Guardian has run Rampart of Ram's Head forever, ever since it was printed. And I haven't. And I look at Stalagmite and I say, this Stalagmite, this is the card that this deck wants, not Rampart of Ram's Head. And other people don't get that. All right. They want to play Rampart and make the deck worse. I don't know. But I'm of the opinion that Stalagmite is like far and away the best shield for this deck, and you want to be running it in almost every single matchup.
Yeah, I'm taking a look because I didn't know. Actually, haven't looked at the Stalagmite card at all. This card seems pretty sick. Creating them Frostbite tokens is quite annoying. Trust me.
Yes. The core reason is that Stalagmite doesn't cost any resources to block with.
Yep.
You can just block with it. Whereas Rampart of Ram's Head, I mean, you can, but it can block for 0. But in order to actually block, it costs a resource.
Yep.
And that means you need to pitch a card. Pitching a card means you have one less card in your hand. This is all super simple stuff, but I'm just spelling it out there because what it logically leads to is if I'm blocking with Rampart of Ram's Head, I'm pitching a card. If I'm pitching a card, I have one less card in my hand. If I have one less card in my hand, I am less likely to fuse Bravo's ability. So it all circles back to Bravo's ability. You want to activate that as often as possible, and Rampart does not fit with that strategy. Sometimes it works if you want to do that plus a Crown of Seeds. Okay, you can kind of get that efficiency where you pitch a yellow or a blue, and you can do both for one card. But Stalagmite just always is free to block with, and that's very valuable for this deck.
Yeah, I definitely can see what your reasoning for it. So, just to jump ahead, you mentioned this. You're going to some more events this weekend?
Yes, I'm going to a lot of ProQuests. I actually have a really booked schedule. I'll be going to 7 different ProQuests. Basically, 1 this weekend, and then not on Sunday. So 1 on Saturday, and then for the next 3 weekends in a row, I'm going to 1 on Saturday and Sunday each time.
Okay.
Most of them are like a 3 to 5 hour drive from me, but I'm really excited to go and play in more of these. So I'll be doing all them all.
You remind me of my PTQ grinding Magic days. I love it because I'm actually doing one this weekend as well, and doing one Saturday over in Midland, Michigan. I'll be going over to a ProQuest, and thankfully there's a ton. I almost decided to drive 8 hours on Sunday to go to one. I was super close.
There's one that's 6 hours away this coming Sunday from us, and I'm just like, that's too far for like a day trip.
Yeah.
Like to drive out in the morning and back. It's too far.
Yeah, I was tempted because the old me would have snapped it off, but I'm too old for those long trips. So you're gonna be playing this list. Is there any big subtractions you would do from this list that you would want to talk about? Anything that you're changing? I know you talk about that you're not playing the equipment, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, because I don't own a Ram set. If I owned one, like if I had one physically sitting here, yes, I would put it on my sideboard because it does come in certain matchups. But if you took my exact list from this one on Philadelphia and said this is what you have to play, I'd be perfectly happy with it. I wouldn't need to change a card. I think I will make a few slight adjustments here and there just because now the meta is going to shift. The expected, like no one knew what to expect going into Philadelphia, and now that very clearly Bravo is a popular thing in the metagame, no small part thanks to the results it put up. I think it makes sense to tune it a little bit more for the mirror match. I mean, we were already trying to do that, but like now it's like I think in Philadelphia it was like 20% of the field roughly. I think in upcoming ProQuest it'll be like 35 to 40% ish. Just ballpark estimates. So I would definitely opt a little bit heavier into teching for the mirror match, but honestly I think the version that we had was pretty good in the mirror regardless. So I would be happy playing that one as well.
Okay, so you like if you're gonna be just handed this deck list, you wouldn't be upset.
I'd be fine with it. Yeah.
Now, what is a good way that you would say if somebody wanted to attack Bravo with their deck? What's the best way to attack Bravo?
Yeah, it's tough because if I knew a definitive deck list, this is what beats Bravo, I might have played it in Philadelphia instead. But that being said, there are some avenues to attack it that I don't know that I don't have an exact deck list recommendation, but just the general concepts that Bravo struggles with would be decks that attack his hand. Bravo doesn't block very well. It has a lot of 2-block cards compared to, like, say, old Bravo, who has a lot of 3 blocks, or other Guardians. We're running a lot of 2-block cards, things like Winter's Bite, Polar Blast. A lot of the elemental cards just have 2-block on them. And you also don't want to block with them because you want them in your hand for fusion.
Right.
So decks that kind of, thrive on being unblocked, either aggressive decks with, like, on hits like Snatch or Coax a Commotion, those are really annoying to be forced to block, essentially, or cards that attack your hand directly, things like Frost Fang. That's partially why Frost Fang was being played in our list, is because it will guarantee force a card out of the opponent's hand, either by blocking or its on hit effect. So basically cards that make you block are a struggle for Bravo.
Okay, so making Bravo, you've got to do hand destruction in some way, putting them on the defensive, and the the thing with defensive, because you're saying there's a lot of times like if you're in that 30 to 40 range, you're just gonna take it because you don't think that they can kill you. It's because you're
Right.
gonna set up for your big attack on the backswing.
Mhm.
So, what is the best way, like an aggressive deck? Because typically a lot of players like to play like more of the aggressive builds, especially when they're first entering the fold. What's the best way they can ensure that they can actually be effective in forcing you to block? Is it just like keep pedal to the metal? What is your like logic? Like if you're gonna play an aggressive deck and you knew Bravo was in the field.
Yeah, if I'm playing an aggressive deck, I would definitely want as many of those like on-hit disruption effects as I could. So I'm looking at things like Ice Lexi, perhaps. She's got like arrows that like Chilean Ice Vein and Blizzard Bolt that apply frostbites to Bravo. As I mentioned, a lot of Bravo's attacks cost exactly 3, so giving him a frostbite is actually pretty annoying because it means pitching an extra card in order to attack with that 3-cost ability. And or things like Chilean Ice Vein that force you to discard cards. Things like Frost Fang. Just a lot of the ice cards are quite disruptive and essentially force out a block. Or just going like super wide. Things like the chain deck that I faced in the finals. Like every time I've played against that chain deck, like it's been pretty close. So it's like it could have gone another way. Like that deck basically can play so many cards from its banish zone. That's kind of his whole idea. He can make like 5-6 attack turns, like individual attacks, not damage. 6 different attacks, and like this Bravo deck's just not going to block them all. It doesn't want to block them all. It doesn't want to block any of them really. So just kind of putting up a bigger turn than Bravo can deal back can be quite effective depending on the circumstances.
Okay, so yeah, just like a go wide strategy, doing multiple attacks. So doing like a chain, doing something that's going to give your attacks a bunch of like go against, or hopefully you can find a way to like make sure you're keeping enough pedal on the metal.
Yeah.
Okay. So Bravo obviously was the star of the show for you. The deck list, you've made it public over on Twitter. From what I saw, I've heard people tell me that you've been like giving it to people over through Reddit before, obviously getting published over on the Flesh and Blood website. From what I also heard some people say that the Flesh and Blood website got input wrongs because they had some Runeblade cards on your list.
I think it was a super minor error. Like Awakening is the Guardian card that I played.
Okay.
But they put in Awakening Bellow, which is a brute card, and like Flash, which is the Elemental Lightning card, was put in as like Rune Flash as a Runeblade card. Which
Yeah.
Seems like an autocorrect kind of thing of whoever was inputting the deck list. I'm not
Yeah.
sure, but yeah, those are pretty obvious which ones they actually were.
Oh yeah, I obviously ain't gonna give anybody a hard time about that because the fact that they're getting us the list that fast, like a quick turnover time from when the event happened, I appreciate that heavily, just so we can get resources. And like saying, I like the way you guys are approaching it because I think a lot of people, Magic does this all the time, which I don't agree with, and I think Flesh and Blood, TCG players in general do this a little too much, and that's follow things for scripture and not actually trying to go outside the box kind of thing. And then you'll see a player go outside the box and do quite well because they didn't stick to it as scripture. So
yeah, that's something that we've definitely Pat and I have really embraced in our deck building strategy because we built this list together and just like not taking. I mean, I hate to be disparaging against your potential audience, but like people are stupid. like if some random person came up to you on the street and said like, "Hey, this is what you should do," you probably wouldn't listen to them, right? Because like you don't know my life, and I kind of think that in card games, right? Like somebody can tell me, "Oh, hey, this is what you should do," but then I'm like, "But my testing says otherwise." I'm gonna trust myself in most cases, and so that's kind of the approach that I've taken to deck building here.
Yep. Usually when another TCG player be like, "That's not correct." Usually it's probably is like correct in some form for me because usually people that are aggressive, like they're on this "I'm right, you're wrong" mentality. It's probably somebody that has lack of testing or improper results is the best way of putting it. You get these skewed results that people think is correct when they're really not. And a lot of people just see something do well one time or a couple times, for example, and they're like, well, if everyone's doing it, it must be correct. I was like, or just everyone's doing the copy and paste right now. It could be either or. It obviously could be correct. Who knows? But to just go out there and say, I'm not going to try anything else because this has to be correct, I feel like you're just like hurting yourself in the long run. So
Absolutely.
I appreciate that you guys are jumping on the gas pedal and doing your thing. But we got to talk a little bit about the Pro Tour.
Sure.
You're qualified for the Pro Tour. That's super exciting. You're going to be playing
Yeah.
with great players like Tariq Patel and many others.
Mhm.
Matt Rogers, all these great personalities for Flesh and Blood. So, such a great honor. Yeah, I'm assuming you're going.
Yes.
I
100% will be going to the one in Jersey.
Yep.
I'll be attempting to get a regular invite through the ProQuest season. Like I said, I'm going to like 7 of those, I think. And so that could give me a 1 direct, and I could save the PTI that I got from the Battle Hardened for a future Pro Tour, which is a really nice system. I don't know why Magic never adopted that. They
I
have this really
agree.
weird like invite system where it's like just give them a ticket and say redeem this for any professional event. Seems like such a better idea.
Yep.
But I digress. But yes, I'll definitely be going to one in Jersey. That's within driving distance for me. Luckily, being in Pittsburgh, you can just drive right over. And a lot of my testing partners are actually over there too, so it's like right in their backyard.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so really looking forward to that. I don't know. I actually don't know what the format is going to be on that. If it's going to be like the same format as the ProQuest season here, or is a new set coming out in between. I actually don't know the details on that yet.
Yep. I thought it was said somewhere it was classic constructed, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
I don't want don't hold me
probably
to
a
it.
mix- Yeah, it's probably a mixture of a constructed plus draft. If I had
Yeah.
to guess, similar to Magic Pro Tours. But I don't know if like there's going to be a change to the current meta, or we're playing like the same meta, or the same set of cards that we have right now. There might be something new, or it might not.
Yeah, because if there is no new set coming out, that means it would be Tales of Aria limited for draft.
Yeah, that would be not ideal. I mean, we've been playing Tales of Aria Limited for quite a while. So.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the limited format for that.
I mean, it's a good format. I think Tales of Aria is a good format. but
Like it's fine. Like I don't
it's
know.
just worn thin. It's been around for quite a while. We've been
Yeah.
drafting the same thing for many months, and I think it's due for a shakeup.
Yeah, due for a shakeup, and hopefully that unlike Magic, we get some coverage. That'd be pretty awesome. I know they've been doing them at the Channel Fireball event, so I'm hoping. I believe Channel Fireball is going to be taking the reins for the Pro Tour, so I'm hopeful that's sweet. I know they got a lot of cool things going on. Everybody's getting a Pro Tour exclusive promo just for going. They have a banquet for everyone that's attending, whether you're playing in the Pro Tour or not, which is super cool. And New Jersey's also a sweet place to play. You got the big city right next door. A little quick $8 bus trip from the convention center. Been there a few times for Magic, if you can't tell.
Yeah.
But yeah, congratulations. You could just hopefully you win one of these Pro Quests, so you could just save that because I believe can't you use that invite for like Worlds? Is that how it works?
So
Yeah.
I just have a generic PTI that can be redeemed for any Pro Tour or Nationals or Worlds.
Yep.
Is how it works right now. Of course, I'd rather not use it right away. I'd rather keep it saved, to use it on one of those bigger events. So that's why we'll be going to the ProQuest, trying to get me and my buddy Pat an invite as well, because it'd be awesome to go to the Pro Tour with him as well.
Yep, he is attending the same events with you.
Yeah, we're all going together.
Oh, nice. Yep, me and a couple buddies are going to be traveling to some events together. We may not be in the same car, but we're essentially traveling together.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to be very respectful of your time. I do appreciate you coming on here, having this conversation with us. The last thing is, if somebody wanted to follow you up on social media, where's the best way to get a hold of you?
I'm pretty active on Twitter. My handle's at Tinman354. It's been my screen name for forever. I used to stream on Twitch and make YouTube videos under the same handle, but I haven't really done that recently. So most likely you can catch me on Twitter at Tinman354.
Okay, Twitter and 354. Also check the description on the YouTube page that we'll have this on. We'll have his Twitter handle under there as well. But again, thank you. If we don't talk between now and then, good luck on the Pro Quest. I hope you and your buddy both get qualified. Obviously, you're going to be in New York playing the Pro Tour one way or another.
Yeah.
With your big win over the weekend. But are you guys going to Indianapolis?
Yes, we're going to Indianapolis as well. So hopefully another chance to get more invites and more wins.
We'll definitely be there as well. We're going to have our whole team over there ready to do a little mixture of Magic and Flesh and Blood that weekend. I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I'm looking forward to having a fun TCG weekend.
Absolutely.
But again,
Well, thank you for having me on.
thank you again for coming on. Congrats on all of your success in Flesh and Blood, and we look forward to seeing you hold up that trophy at the Pro Tour.
I certainly hope so.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. And until next time, guys, this has been Talking Swish. We will catch you later.